Hello beautiful people. Welcome to Gringotts Hub. In today's episode, we explore, what if a Gringotts ritual revealed Harry was heir to 9 ancient houses and the true emperor of all magic. Hit like, subscribe, and join our community of story lovers. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Blood and Gold. The summer heat pressed against the windows of number 4, Privet Drive, but Harry Potter felt cold. He'd felt cold since the Department of Mysteries. Since watching Sirius fall through the veil with that look of surprise on his face, not fear, just surprise, as though death were merely an unexpected interruption to an otherwise entertaining duel. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sitting in this room, of Dudley's television bleeding through the walls, of Uncle Vernon's grunting complaints about the freaks who kept sending owls. 3 weeks of replaying that moment, adjusting variables, trying to find the version where he was faster, smarter, better. The letter from Gringotts had arrived that morning. Not by owl, by a goblin in a 3-piece suit who appeared on the doorstep at 7 in the morning, nearly giving Aunt Petunia a coronary. The goblin had handed Harry a sealed envelope, bowed once, which struck Harry as odd, since goblins didn't bow to anyone, and vanished with a crack that set off car alarms down the street. Mr. Potter, your presence is required at Gringotts Bank for the reading of the last will and testament of Sirius Black III. Additionally, matters of significant inheritance have arisen that demand your immediate attention. A portkey has been enclosed, the seal of this letter. Activation phrase, I claim what is mine. May your gold flow and your enemies bleed. Ragnarok, Director of Gringotts. The director. Not an accounts manager, not a clerk. The Director of Gringotts himself had signed this letter. Harry turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of the wax seal, heavier than it should have been, warm against his thumb. He didn't tell the Dursleys. He didn't send an owl to Dumbledore. He didn't check in with the order. He was done asking permission. Harry grabbed the seal, said the words, and felt the hook behind his navel yank him forward into spinning darkness. He landed on his feet, that was new, in a marble chamber he'd never seen before. Not the main hall of Gringotts with its long counters and queuing witches. This was somewhere deeper. The ceiling vaulted upward into shadow, and the walls were lined with gold-veined obsidian that seemed to drink the torchlight. The air smelled of old metal and something else, something that reminded Harry of the way magic felt when it was very, very concentrated. Mr. Potter. The goblin who spoke was ancient. Not merely old, ancient in the way mountains are ancient. His skin was like cracked leather drawn over iron, his eyes black and sharp as obsidian chips. He sat behind a desk carved from a single block of dark stone, and he was flanked by 6 goblin guards in full battle armor, axes gleaming. I am Ragnarok, the goblin said. Please sit. Harry sat in the chair opposite. It was comfortable, surprisingly so, and positioned so that he was at eye level with the director rather than looking down at him. A deliberate choice. He appreciated it. The will reading for Sirius Black is a straightforward matter, Ragnarok said, pulling a scroll from a drawer. He left everything to you. The Black fortune, properties, artifacts, and his seat on the Wisengamot. You are now Lord Black in addition to the Potter heir you already were. Harry nodded. He'd expected this. It hurt, a dull ache behind his sternum, but he'd expected it. However, Ragnarok set the scroll aside and fixed Harry with those obsidian eyes. In processing the Black inheritance, certain irregularities surfaced. Connections in the bloodline that had been suppressed. Deliberately hidden, in point of fact, by magical means. Hidden by whom? That is something we intend to discover. But first, Ragnarok produced a stone basin, shallow and wide, with runes carved along its rim that glowed a faint, pulsing gold. We must conduct a full inheritance test. Given what we have already uncovered, I suspect the results will be extensive. Harry leaned forward. What have you already uncovered? Ragnarok's thin lips pulled back from pointed teeth, not a threat, Harry realized. A smile. Goblins rarely smiled, and when they did, it meant something significant was about to happen. Your mother, Ragnar said, was not a Muggleborn. The world tilted slightly. She was a pureblood of an ancient line, placed with a Muggle family as an infant. The concealment was masterfully done, layers of blood glamours, heritage suppressors, even modifications to the Hogwarts enrollment quill. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to hide what Lily Evans truly was. Harry's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Who was she? The inheritance test will reveal all. 7 drops of blood in the basin, Mr. Potter. The runic array will do the rest. Harry didn't hesitate. He drew his wand, underage magic be damned, he was in a goblin bank beyond ministry jurisdiction, and made a small cut on his left palm. 7 drops fell into the basin like liquid rubies, and the moment the 7th hit the stone surface, the runes exploded with light. Not gold. Not silver. White, pure, blinding white that filled the chamber and made the goblin guards take an involuntary step backward. The basin trembled, then the light contracted, pulling inward, and what emerged was a parchment that grew from the stone like a living thing, stretching upward, growing longer and longer as names and lines and crests burned themselves into existence. Harry watched his family tree write itself into being. Potter at the top of one branch, he expected that. Black joining it through Sirius's will, expected that too. Then the lines kept growing. Peveril. The name burned bright, connecting to the Potters through a line so ancient the intermediate names were barely readable. And through Peveril, Harry's breath caught, to Gryffindor. His mother's true heritage unfurled like a banner. Le Fay. The line of Morgan Le Fay herself, unbroken for 15 centuries, hidden and protected and now blazing forth with a light that made the obsidian walls ring like struck bells. And through Le Fay, connecting to, Emery's. Merlin's line. Harry stood without realizing he'd done so. The parchment was still growing, still burning with new names and connections. Slytherin, connected through the scar, through Voldemort's failed curse, through magical conquest. Pendragon, connected through some convergence of the Le Fay and Emery's lines that the diagram showed as a knot of pure golden light. And at the very bottom of the parchment, a name Harry had never heard, Aldrich the Eternal. 9 houses. 9 crests burned in a circle around his name at the center of the diagram, connected by lines of fire, Potter. Black. Peveril. Gryffindor. Slytherin. Emery's. Le Fay. Pendragon. Aldrich. The light should have faded. The test should have been complete. But instead, the 9 crests began to move, rotating around his name, spinning faster and faster until they blurred into a single ring of light, and from that ring, a 10th symbol emerged. A crown. Not a crest. Not a house sigil. A crown of woven light that hovered above his name on the parchment, and as it appeared, every torch in the chamber went out. Every torch in Gringotts went out, Harry would learn later. Every torch, candle, and magical light source in magical Britain flickered and died for exactly 3 seconds, and when they returned, they burned brighter than before. The chamber was silent. Ragnar had risen from his seat, the first time in Harry's experience that a goblin had stood for a wizard. The 6 guards had dropped to one knee, axes laid flat on the ground before them. Impossible, one of the guards whispered. Not impossible, Ragnar said, his voice barely above a murmur. Foretold. The director came around his desk, and for the first time, Harry could read the expression on the ancient goblin's face clearly. It was awe. It was recognition. It was the look of someone witnessing a prophecy fulfilled. Ragnar knelt. The director of Gringotts, a goblin who had not bent his knee to wizard, king, or god in 400 years, knelt before Harry Potter. The Avalon Compact is fulfilled, Ragnar said. When 9 houses converge in one blood, the crown awakens. The Emperor of all magic stands before us. He looked up, those obsidian eyes blazing. What would you have of us, your Imperial Majesty? Harry looked at the parchment still floating in the air, at the crown of light hovering above his name, at the kneeling goblins. He felt something settling into him, not from outside but from within, as if something that had always existed in his blood was finally being allowed to breathe. The magic of 9 houses moved through him like rivers finding the sea, and the sea was vast. He could feel Gringotts. The whole bank. Every ward, every vault, every defensive enchantment the goblins had layered over centuries. He could feel them like he could feel his own heartbeat, present, alive, his to command if he chose. He didn't choose. The wards were the goblins' work, their pride, their art. He let them be. "Stand," Harry said. His voice sounded different to his own ears, not louder, but carrying more weight, as if the air itself paid attention when he spoke. "I don't need people kneeling. I need answers." Ragnarok rose, and there was something new in his eyes, respect, Harry thought. Not for the title. For the response. Ask. My mother. Who hit her? Who placed her with muggles? Ragnarok returned to his desk and withdrew a second file, thicker than the first. We believe it was Albus Dumbledore. The cold that had lived in Harry's chest for 3 weeks crystallized into something harder. Not anger, not yet. Something more controlled than anger. A focused intensity that made the torches in the chamber flare. Why? The Lul Fei line was thought extinct. Its survival would have upset certain balances of power that were convenient for specific parties. Your mother, as a Muggleborn, was a symbol, proof that magical talent could arise from nothing. As the Lul Fei heir, she would have been proof of something quite different. Ragnarok's expression was carefully neutral. I speculate that the headmaster feared what a Lul Fei Potter marriage would produce. And with good reason, it seems. Harry absorbed this. Filed it. Let it settle into the growing architecture of his understanding. The 9 houses, he said. What does each one give me? Practically speaking. Each carries magical gifts embedded in the bloodline. Now that your heritage is unlocked, they will manifest fully. The Potter gift is war magic, instinctive martial spellcraft. The Black gift is shadow manipulation and blood ward mastery. Peveril grants death magic, not necromancy as commonly understood, but dominion over the threshold between life and death. Gryffindor bestows a courage aura that strengthens allies and an affinity with magical beasts. Slytherin, claimed through magical conquest when the Dark Lord's curse failed, gives Parseltongue, which you already possess, and mastery of the mind arts. Ragnarok ticked them off on his fingers. Emery's, Merlin's own line, grants raw magical amplification. Your spells will carry 3, perhaps 4 times the force of an ordinary wizard's. Lul Fei provides ritual magic and fate sight, the ability to perceive the threads of destiny and, to some degree, weave them. Pendragon is sovereign authority, command magic that compels truth and obedience, though it functions through legitimacy rather than force. And Aldrich? Something shifted in Ragnarok's expression. Aldrich the Eternal was the first wizard. Not the most powerful of his age, the first, period. Before Merlin, before the Founders, before recorded magical history. His gift is time sense and an immortal constitution. You will not age. You will heal from any wound. You will not die of natural causes. Harry sat back down. Not from weakness, from the need to be still while he processed. You said the Avalon Compact. What is it? Ragnarok moved to one of the obsidian walls and pressed his palm against it. A section of wall slid open, revealing a niche containing a single book, not old and dusty, but preserved in stasis, its leather cover as fresh as the day it was bound. The Avalon Compact was established at the founding of magical society in these islands, Ragnarok said, bringing the book to the desk. It states that when the 9 bloodlines converge in a single heir, that individual is recognized as the supreme magical authority, not merely of Britain, but of all magical civilization. The Emperor of all magic. The title has not been held since before Merlin's time. It was Merlin himself who wrote the compact, believing the convergence would never occur naturally. He paused. He was nearly correct. It took 1500 years. And this authority, it's real. Enforceable. Every magical government on Earth was founded under the Avalon Compact. It is written into the foundational wards of every ministry, every school, every magical institution. When the Emperor speaks with authority, the magic of those institutions responds. You cannot be overruled by any government, any court, any body of wizards. You are, in the most literal sense possible, the highest authority in the magical world. Harry let out a breath. The scope of it was staggering, but the strange thing was, it didn't feel wrong. It felt like putting on a coat that had been tailored for him. The magic knew him. The power recognized him. He'd spent 15 years being shoved into cupboards and told he was nothing, and now the fundamental forces of magical reality were telling him he was everything. He chose to believe the magic. Right, Harry said. I'll need my rings. Ragnar's smile returned, all teeth and predatory satisfaction. He produced a box of dark wood, opened it, and 9 rings sat in velvet depressions. Each was distinct. The Potter ring was gold with a ruby lion, the black ring was silver with an onyx raven, and so on down the line. But as Harry looked at them, he felt them pulling toward each other, wanting to merge. He picked up the Potter ring first. It slid onto his right ring finger and flared with warmth. The black ring went to his right middle finger. One by one, he placed them, and as the 9th ring, Aldrich's band of plain white gold, slipped onto his left thumb, all 9 flared simultaneously and merged. What remained was a single ring on his right hand, dark metal banded with 9 different colors that shifted and moved like liquid light. At its center sat a stone that seemed to contain a galaxy, depth upon depth upon depth. And on his head, though no physical object appeared, Harry could feel the weight of a crown. Not heavy. Grounding. There is one more matter, Ragnar said. He opened a drawer and produced a sheaf of financial documents. Your combined assets. How much? The Potter Vault alone contains 400 million galleons. The Black Vault adds 600 million. Peveril, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Emrys, Lofey, Pendragon, and Aldrich vaults contain, collectively, Ragnar consulted the document, though Harry suspected the old goblin had the number memorized. 47 billion galleons, 600,000 sickles, and 12 nuts. Harry blinked. Billion. With a B. With a B, Ragnar confirmed. Additionally, you own approximately 40% of all magical real estate in Britain, including Hogwarts Castle, which belongs to the Gryffindor and Slytherin estates jointly, and the land on which the Ministry of Magic was built, which belongs to the Pendragon estate. You own the land under this very bank, in fact, though we have a perpetual lease that I trust you will honor. The goblins have been fair with me today, Harry said. I have a long memory for people who treat me fairly. Ragnar inclined his head. As do we, your majesty. As do we. Harry stood. He could feel the magic of 9 houses humming in his blood now, not chaotic, not overwhelming, but present. Like 9 instruments that had suddenly found themselves part of the same orchestra and were tuning to one another. Each one brought its own flavor, the fierce heat of Potter war magic, the cold precision of black shadowcraft, the deep stillness of Peveril death magic, the bold warmth of Gryffindor courage, the serpentine flexibility of Slytherin mind arts, the vast ocean of Emrys amplification, the silver threads of Lofey fate weaving, the golden authority of Pendragon command, and the diamond-clear eternity of Aldrich time sense. He was 16 years old. He was the most powerful wizard alive. He was the emperor of all magic. And he had work to do. I want a full accounting of every transaction on the Potter account since my parents' deaths, Harry said. I want to know who's been accessing them, what's been withdrawn, and by whose authority. I want the suppression on my mother's bloodline analyzed, who cast it, when, and what magical signature they left. And I want a meeting with the full Goblin Council at their earliest convenience. I intend to discuss renegotiating the terms of goblin-wizard relations. Ragnarok's eyes widened fractionally. You would, renegotiate? Goblins built this bank. Goblins forged the greatest magical artifacts in history. Goblins have been treated as second-class beings by a society that would collapse without them. Harry met the director's gaze steadily. That ends now. I'm not interested in ruling over people who resent me. I'm interested in alliances between equals. For the second time that day, Ragnarok smiled, and this time, it wasn't predatory. It was something closer to genuine pleasure. Your Majesty, the director said, I believe this will be the beginning of a very profitable relationship. For all parties. Harry emerged from Gringotts into Diagon Alley, and the world felt different. Not looked different, felt different. His senses had expanded in ways he was still cataloging. He could feel the wards on every shop, could sense the magical cores of the witches and wizards hurrying past, could perceive the faint silver threads of fate connecting people to their futures. The Lu-Fei sight was the strangest, seeing those threads was like having a new color added to the spectrum. His brain was still learning to process it. He walked down the alley, and people stared. Not because they recognized him, though some did, but because he was radiating magic. Not intentionally, not aggressively, but his core was still settling after absorbing 9 bloodline gifts, and until it stabilized, he was essentially a bonfire walking through a room full of candles. He needed allies. That was the first thought, clear and strategic in a way his thinking hadn't been before. Whether that clarity was a gift of the bloodlines or simply the result of finally having a clear purpose, he wasn't sure. Either way, his mind was already working. Hermione first. She would understand the legal and political implications, would help him navigate the labyrinth of magical law. Neville second, because Neville was loyal, brave, and had more steel in him than anyone gave him credit for. And then, others. He needed people from every corner of magical society, not just Gryffindors. But before allies, he needed to handle one thing. Harry Operaat. He'd never done it before, hadn't learned, hadn't practiced, but the Emery's amplification and Potter war magic instincts combined, and he simply knew how. The magic responded to his intent with an eagerness that was almost embarrassing. He didn't even crack. He appeared on the front step of number 12, Grimmauld Place. His house now, by Black inheritance. He could feel the Fidelius charm like a curtain of silk, and he reached out with the black shadow magic and pulled. The Fidelius shattered. The house shuddered, visible now to anyone who cared to look. Harry felt the defensive wards underneath, the real ones, the ancient Black family protections, and those, he left. He merely dismantled the secret keeper charm because he refused to be hidden anymore. He walked inside. The hallway was dark and dusty, Walburga Black's portrait still hanging in its alcove. As Harry passed, the portrait's eyes snapped open, mouth forming the beginning of her usual tirade. She stopped. Stared. Her painted eyes went wide, and she dropped into a curtsy within her frame. My Lord Black, she whispered. You bear the ring. I bear 9, Harry said without stopping. Be silent or I'll burn the frame. She was silent. The kitchen was occupied. Remus Lupin sat at the table nursing a cup of tea, looking worn and grey. Across from him, Nymphadora Tonks was reading the Prophet with her boots on the table. They both looked up as Harry entered, and both froze. Harry? Remus stood, concern flashing across his scarred face. What, how did you get here? The Fidelius, I broke it. Remus blinked. You, broke a Fidelius charm? It was on my house. I didn't want it there anymore. Harry pulled out a chair and sat. He was aware of how he must look to them, different. Straighter posture, steadier gaze, magic radiating off him like heat from pavement. He didn't try to tone it down. I need to talk to you both. Tonks had lowered the Prophet, eyes fixed on Harry's right hand. On the ring that shifted with 9 colors. Watcher, Harry, she said slowly. That's not a normal ring. No. It's 9 rings merged into one. He looked at Remus, at the man who was the last real connection to his parents. Remus, did you know my mother wasn't a Muggleborn? The teacup cracked in Remus's hand. Not from a squeeze, from a pulse of accidental magic. The werewolf's eyes went wide and his face drained of color in a way that told Harry everything. You didn't know, Harry said. Good. Harry, what are you talking about? Lily was the last daughter of the Lufey line, hidden with Muggles as an infant. Probably by Dumbledore. Harry held up a hand as Remus started to sputter. I've just come from Gringotts. Full inheritance test. I'm the heir to 9 ancient houses, Remus. Potter, Black, Peverell, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Emrys, Lufey, Pendragon, and Aldrich. He paused. And apparently, I'm the emperor of all magic. The kitchen was very quiet. Somewhere upstairs, Creature dropped something. Tonks broke the silence first. I'm sorry, Emperor of what now? Harry explained. Concisely, without embellishment, the test, the compact, the 9 houses and their gifts, the title and what it meant. He watched their faces as he spoke. Remus went from shock to disbelief to a kind of numb acceptance. Tonks went from shock to excitement to visible calculation of political implications. The entire order needs to know, Remus said when Harry finished. Dumbledore hid my mother's heritage. Placed her with Muggles. Let me grow up in a cupboard under the stairs when I had a dozen ancestral homes waiting for me. Harry's voice was even, controlled. The anger was there, but it was cold now, purposeful. I'll speak with Dumbledore when I'm ready. Not before. Harry, I'm sure he had reasons, he always has reasons. That's part of the problem. Harry stood. I'm not here to argue about Dumbledore. I'm here because this is my house, and I wanted you to know what's happened. And because I need people I trust around me. He looked at Remus, really looked at him, with all of his new senses. He could see the lycanthropy in Remus's aura like a dark thread woven through gold. He could also see how to fix it. Remus, Harry said quietly. The Aldrich bloodline carries knowledge of healing. And the Lufey gift is ritual magic. He stepped closer. I can cure you. If you want. Remus went very still. Tonks's chair scraped back as she stood. Harry, no one can cure lycanthropy, no one who's tried has had access to what I have. Harry held out his hand. I can see it in you. The curse is a parasite, attached to your magical core. The healing knowledge from Aldrich shows me the anchor points, and Lufey ritual magic gives me the ability to sever them. He kept his hand extended. Do you trust me? Remus stared at the offered hand. A dozen emotions crossed his scarred face. Hope was the most painful to watch, because it was clearly something the man had denied himself for decades. You're 16 years old, Harry. I'm the last scion of the first wizard who ever lived. Age is somewhat relative. Harry smiled, a real smile, the first one in weeks. Let me do this. Let me do something good with all of this, before I have to do the hard things. Remus took his hand. Harry closed his eyes and let the magic guide him. The Aldrich knowledge was like a library opening its doors, centuries of healing understanding flooding through him in ordered, accessible streams. He could see Remus's magical core, could trace the dark tendrils of the werewolf curse wrapped around it like invasive vines. The Lufey ritual instincts showed him the geometry, where to cut, how to sever without damaging the core beneath. His magic surged. Not a spell, something older. A working power flowed from him into Remus in a controlled cascade, and Harry used it like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting away the dark threads one by one. Remus gasped, a sound of pain and shock and something else, something like breaking the surface after being underwater for 20 years. It took 30 seconds. 20 years of suffering, ended in 30 seconds. When Harry opened his eyes, Remus was on his knees, tears streaming down his face. His aura was clean, gold without the dark thread. His scars hadn't changed, those were physical and long-healed. But the curse was gone. Harry could feel its absence like a removed splinter. "It's done," Harry said. Tonks made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She dropped to her knees next to Remus, who was staring at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I can't feel it," Remus whispered. "The wolf. Harry, it's gone." "I can't," his voice broke. He looked up at Harry with an expression of such raw gratitude and wonder that Harry had to look away. "Don't kneel," Harry said quietly. "Not you. Never you." Remus rose, wiping his face with the back of his hand, and pulled Harry into a fierce embrace. Harry allowed it, welcomed it. For all the power burning in his blood, for all the cosmic significance of what had just happened at Gringotts, this was what mattered. Helping the people he loved. "Anything," Remus said into Harry's shoulder. "Whatever you need." "Anything, Harry." "I need a defense teacher," Harry said with a slight smile. "Among other things." Tonks was already on her feet, eyes blazing with determination. "Okay. So. The Emperor of all magic. We're doing this. What's the plan?" "The plan," Harry said, stepping back from Remus, "is to end this war. Not slowly. Not carefully. Not with acceptable losses and strategic retreats. I'm going to find Voldemort's Horcruxes." Remus flinched at the name. Tonks didn't. "Destroy them, kill him, reform the ministry, free the magical creatures from institutionalized slavery, and build something actually worth living in." He looked at them both. "But first, I need to pick up Hermione and Neville." "You're not going back to Privet Drive," Remus said. It wasn't a question. "I was never going back to Privet Drive." Harry glanced around the kitchen. "This house will serve as a staging ground for now. I own it, and the Black Wards are formidable. But I'll be finding something more appropriate soon." Ragnarok mentioned that the Pendragon estate includes a castle. "A castle," Tonks repeated, grinning. "Because of course it does." Harry moved toward the door, then paused. "Remus. Tonks. What I said about Dumbledore, I'm not declaring war on the old man. I respect what he's done for the light. But I won't be his soldier and I won't be his secret weapon. He kept things from me that I had a right to know, and that ends today." Remus nodded slowly. "He'll want to talk to you. He can request an audience." The words came out naturally, without arrogance, just the simple assumption of someone who understood their position. Remus and Tonks exchanged a glance. "I'll have Creature prepare rooms," Remus said. "For your guests." Harry was already walking. He had his hand on the front door when he felt it, a disturbance in the wards. Someone apparating to the front step. Now that the Fidelius was down, the house was visible, and certain people would have noticed. He opened the door before the person on the other side could knock. Albus Dumbledore stood on the step, resplendent in robes of deep purple, half-moon spectacles perched on his long nose. His expression was carefully composed, but Harry could see through it now. The Slytherin mind arts and Le Fate sight combined to paint a complete picture: surprise, rapidly concealed. Concern. Calculation. And underneath it all, something Harry had never detected before. Fear. "Harry, my boy," Dumbledore said, his voice carrying its usual warmth. "I felt the Fidelius fall. Are you?" His eyes dropped to Harry's hand. "To the ring." His words died. For 3 full seconds, Albus Dumbledore said nothing. His face went through a series of micro-expressions that the greatest poker player in the world wouldn't have caught, but Harry caught them all. Recognition. Shock. Something that might have been guilt. And then the careful reconstruction of his pleasant mask. Ah, Dumbledore said. You've been to Gringotts. I have. Harry didn't step aside. Didn't invite the headmaster in. He stood in the doorway of his own house, and the implicit power dynamic was not lost on either of them. We need to talk, Dumbledore. But not right now. Harry, I understand this must be overwhelming, it's not. Harry held the old man's gaze. Blue eyes met green, and for the first time in their history, it was Dumbledore who looked away first. Nothing about this is overwhelming. It's clarifying. He paused. You hid my mother's heritage. You put her with Muggles. You knew what she was, what I could be, and you buried it. Dumbledore's face was very still. There were reasons, there always are. Harry stepped back. You'll get your explanation, and I'll get mine. But not today. Today I have things to do and people to collect. Come to dinner tomorrow evening. 7 o'clock. We'll talk then. He closed the door on Albus Dumbledore's face. Through the wood, he heard the old wizard remain on the step for a long moment. Then the crack of apparition. Harry leaned against the door and let out a breath. His heart was hammering, not from fear. From exhilaration. He'd just dismissed the most powerful wizard of the age, and it had felt right. Natural. Like a king reminding a powerful advisor that however wise he might be, the final authority wasn't his. That, Tonks said from the kitchen doorway, eyes wide, was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Harry grinned at her, the first real grin in weeks, free and fierce. I'm just getting started. He apparat to Hermione's house first. Crawley, Surrey, a neat suburban street not unlike Privet Drive, but warmer somehow. Less hostile. The Granger's house had window boxes with actual flowers in them. He appeared on the front lawn and rang the bell like a normal person. Hermione's mother answered, a tall woman with Hermione's bushy hair tamed into a professional bun, and barely had time to say, Harry, before Hermione herself came thundering down the stairs. Harry! What, you're not supposed to, how did you? She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, staring. Her eyes were doing the same thing Tonks's had done, going wide, reading the magical output, trying to process what she was seeing. Hermione had always been more magically sensitive than she got credit for. Hi, Harry said. Can I come in? 10 minutes later, he was sitting in the Granger's kitchen with a cup of tea he hadn't asked for. Hermione's mother had insisted, explaining the situation for the second time that day. Hermione had her notebook out before he finished the first sentence. 9 houses, she said, writing furiously. The Avalon Compact, Harry, I've read references to it. Obscure references in Bathilda Bagshot's early drafts, the published version of History of Magic removes them. Someone edited the historical record. Probably the same someone who hid my mother's bloodline. Hermione looked up from her notes. Her expression was complex, she was excited, intellectually vibrating at the implications, but she was also Hermione, which meant she was already thinking 3 steps ahead about what could go wrong. Harry, this is enormous. The political implications alone, the ministry, the Wisengamot, the international community, I know. You'll need a legal framework. The compact gives you authority, but authority without structure just looks like tyranny. You'll need to establish clear boundaries of power, a system of, Hermione. Harry smiled. That's why I'm here. I need you. Not just as a friend, as an advisor. You understand law and structure better than anyone I know. I need someone who can take what I'm about to do and make it legitimate in the eyes of people who care about process. She put down her quill. Looked at him for a long moment. You're really not afraid, are you? Of any of this? Harry considered the question honestly. No. I've been afraid my whole life, afraid of the Dursleys, afraid of Voldemort, afraid of losing people. And being afraid didn't protect anyone. Sirius still died. A flicker of pain, quickly mastered. I'm done being afraid. I have the power to change things, and I'm going to use it. Hermione nodded slowly. Then she stood up, went to the kitchen counter, and began packing her already prepared school trunk with the efficiency of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of call to action. "Mom, Dad," she called into the living room. "I'm going to Harry's. I might be a while." "How long is a while, dear?" her mother called back. Hermione looked at Harry. "Until we've fixed the world," he said. "Quite a while, then," Hermione said to her parents, and grabbed her trunk. Neville was next. Longbottom Manor was an ancient pile in Yorkshire, nothing like the cramped London townhouse of Grimmauld Place. Harry felt the wards as they approached, old and strong, and he felt them recognize the Pendragon ring on his hand. The wards practically genuflected. Augusta Longbottom answered the door herself, ramrod straight and formidable in her vulture hat. She took one look at Harry's ring, drew a sharp breath, and called for Neville in a voice that brooked absolutely no delay. Neville appeared from somewhere upstairs, slightly dirt-smudged from his greenhouse work. "Harry." "What? I need you, Nevada. Something's happened and I need people I trust." Harry paused. "And you might want to sit down for what I'm about to tell you." They sat in the Longbottom parlor, Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Augusta, who refused to leave the room despite Harry not explicitly inviting her to stay. He told the story again, more concisely this time, with Hermione filling in details he missed. When he finished, Neville sat in silence for a moment. Then he leaned forward, elbows on knees, and looked at Harry with an expression that was neither awed nor overwhelmed. It was the expression of someone who'd been waiting for the world to make sense and had just been shown how. "What do you need from me?" Neville asked. "Not, is this real?" "Not, are you sure?" "Not, what about Dumbledore?" "Just, what do you need?" Harry could have hugged him. "I need a general," Harry said. "Someone who can lead people in the field. Someone brave enough to stand in the front line and smart enough to know when not to." Neville's jaw set. Something changed in his eyes, a straightening, a hardening. "I'm in." Augusta Longbottom had risen from her chair during Harry's explanation. Now she stood by the fireplace, one hand on the mantel, the other pressed to her chest. Her eyes were bright. "The Longbottoms served the Pendragon throne," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Before there was a ministry, before there was a Wisingamot. We were Knights of the Crown." She turned to Harry and, for the first time, he saw Augusta Longbottom without her armor of propriety and pride. "My grandson will serve. And so will I, if you'll have an old woman with more connections than sense." "I'll have anyone with loyalty and spine," Harry said. "And you appear to have both, Madame Longbottom." She smiled, a fierce thing, full of teeth. "Call me Augusta. If my grandson's going to war under your banner, we might as well be on first-name terms." They returned to Grimmauld Place as a group, Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Augusta, who insisted on coming along. Remus and Tonks had been busy, the kitchen was cleaned, extra chairs transfigured, and a rough map of Britain was spread across the table. But as Harry walked through the front door, he felt something else. A presence in the house that hadn't been there when he left. Upstairs. In the drawing room. He held up a hand, and his companion stopped. "Someone's here," he said quietly. Then he expanded his senses, Peveril Deathsight combined with Slytherin mind arts, and identified the magical signature. Female. Young. Familiar, though he'd never spoken more than a handful of words to her. Controlled and cold on the surface, calculating underneath, but at the core, afraid. Harry climbed the stairs to the drawing room. He opened the door without knocking. Daphne Greengrass sat in a chair by the empty fireplace, legs crossed, blonde hair immaculate, wearing wizarding robes of deep green that probably cost more than the Dursleys' car. Her expression was perfectly composed, a mask as professional as Dumbledore's, though without the twinkle. "Potter," she said. "Greengrass." Harry leaned against the doorframe. You broke into my house. The wards let me in. Apparently the Black bloodline recognizes the Greengrass family as allies of old. She tilted her head. Though I suspect the real reason is that the house recognized I came in peace. And did you? That depends. She stood, gracefully, unhurried, and faced him. Rumors travel fast in certain circles, Potter. My father heard from his contact at Gringotts within 20 minutes of your departure. Every torch in Britain going out for 3 seconds is not exactly subtle. Harry shrugged. I wasn't trying to be subtle. No, I imagine not. Her eyes flicked to his ring, and something in her composure cracked, just for a moment. Just enough for Harry to see the real person beneath the mask. I'm here because my family is in danger. Harry said nothing. Let her talk. My father isn't a Death Eater. He's maintained neutrality through 2 wars by being useful to everyone and threatening to no one. But the Dark Lord is running out of patience with neutrals, and Lucius Malfoy has been pressuring my father to pledge Astoria, my younger sister, as a future bride for Draco. Her jaw tightened. My sister is 13 years old. And you came to me. I came to the only person in Britain who might be powerful enough to shield my family without demanding something worse in return. She met his gaze squarely. I'm not here to kneel. I'm here to negotiate. Harry studied her. With his new senses, he could read her more clearly than she would have liked. The fear for her sister was genuine, the pragmatism was real, and underneath both was a sharp, ambitious intelligence that reminded him a bit of Hermione with fewer scruples. What are you offering in exchange? Myself. At his raised eyebrow, she rolled her eyes. Not like that, Potter. My political knowledge. My connections in Slytherin circles. I know how pureblood families think, how they maneuver, what they fear. You're about to start a political revolution, you need someone who speaks their language. Harry thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Welcome to the team, Greengrass. Your family is under my protection as of now. I'll ward your estate personally before the week is out. In return, I want your honest counsel, even when you think I won't want to hear it. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, quickly hidden. That's it? No oaths? No binding contracts? If I need magical contracts to secure your loyalty, then your loyalty isn't worth having. Harry pushed off the doorframe. Come downstairs. We're having a meeting. She followed him down, and if there was a slight shake in her hands that hadn't been there before, neither of them mentioned it. The kitchen of Grimmauld Place was full now, Harry at the head of the table, Hermione and Neville on his left, Daphne and Augusta on his right, Remus and Tonks across from them. 7 people around a table. The beginnings of a court. Here's where we stand, Harry said. Voldemort is out there with multiple Horcruxes keeping him alive. The Ministry is useless, Fudge is either corrupt or incompetent or both. Dumbledore has good intentions but a pattern of keeping secrets that's gotten people killed. And as of today, I am technically the supreme magical authority on this planet. He looked around the table. I intend to exercise that authority. How? Hermione asked, quill at the ready. Tomorrow, I'm going to the Ministry. Not to ask for anything, to inform them. The Avalon Compact is waking up, and every ministry in the world is going to feel it. Better they hear it from me than from their foundations shaking. Fudge will resist, Daphne said. Publicly and loudly. Good. Let him. Every time he pushes back against a legitimate authority he can't overrule, he weakens himself. Harry's smile was thin. I'm not going to fight the Ministry, Daphne. I'm going to make the Ministry irrelevant and then offer them the chance to be part of something better. What about Voldemort? Neville asked. The Horcruxes are the priority. He can't die until they're destroyed. Harry held up his hand, the ring pulsed. I can sense them now. Peveril death magic can feel objects tied to fragmented souls. I know where at least 3 of them are. Silence around the table. You can just sense them? Remus asked. Like feeling a toothache, except the toothache is a piece of a madman's soul anchored to a physical object. Harry drummed his fingers on the table. There's one here in this house. Has been for years. Every head turned. Harry stood, crossed to the kitchen doorway, and called up the stairs. Creature. The old elf appeared with a crack, bowing so low his nose touched the floor. Master Harry calls creature. Bring me the locket. Regulus's locket. Creature went rigid. His enormous eyes filled with tears, and he vanished without a word. When he returned moments later, he was cradling a heavy golden locket in both hands, trembling, weeping silently. Harry took it. He could feel it, the shard of Voldemort's soul squirming inside, dark and putrid. His Peveril death sight showed it clearly, a piece of something that should have passed beyond the veil, trapped and corrupted. Everyone stand back. They did. Harry held the locket in his left hand and raised his right. The magic came without a spell, Potter war magic, Emery's amplification, and Peveril death mastery combining into something new. A working that was half intuition and half instinct, channeled through his right hand in a beam of white gold light that punched through the locket like a blade through wet paper. The locket screamed, a thin, horrible sound, and burst apart. Dark smoke erupted from the shattered metal, formed briefly into a face, pale, red-eyed, furious, and then dispersed into nothing. The kitchen fell silent. Harry dropped the ruined locket onto the table. 1 down, he said. 6 to go. Creature was staring at the destroyed Horcrux with an expression of such profound relief that Harry felt his heart twist. He knelt, the Emperor of all magic, kneeling on a kitchen floor to be eye level with a house elf. Creature. Regulus's mission is complete. The locket is destroyed. The old elf's composure shattered. He wept openly, pressing his forehead to Harry's knee. Master Regulus, he tried, creature failed him, you didn't fail. You kept it safe until someone could destroy it. That's not failure. That's loyalty. Harry put a hand on the elf's bony shoulder. I'm going to honor Regulus Black's memory, creature. I'm going to destroy the creature he died fighting. I swear it. Creature looked up with red-rimmed eyes full of a devotion that made the air feel thick. Creature serves. Creature serves the true emperor. Harry hadn't told Creature the title. The elf had felt it, house elf magic was older than wizard magic, closer to the raw stuff of reality. Of course they could feel what Harry now was. He stood. Looked around the table at his people, his first people. Hermione was writing furiously, already outlining a legal framework. Neville sat straight-backed and determined. Daphne was watching Harry with an expression that had shifted from calculated assessment to something warmer and far more dangerous. Augusta was nodding as if this was exactly what she'd been waiting for her entire life. Remus and Tonks stood shoulder to shoulder, united in purpose. Right, Harry said. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we change the world. That night, Harry stood on the roof of Grimmauld Place, looking out over Muggle London. The city sprawled beneath him, orange streetlights and moving headlights and the distant rumble of life. Somewhere out there, a million Muggles went about their evening without knowing that the magical world existed. Somewhere out there, Voldemort was hiding, planning, killing. Somewhere, Dumbledore was pacing, trying to figure out how his carefully arranged chess game had just been flipped. Harry felt the night air on his face and let himself acknowledge the enormity of what was happening. Not with fear, he'd meant what he said to Hermione about being done with fear, but with a kind of solemn appreciation. He'd spent 15 years being a pawn. Being manipulated, hidden, used, and kept ignorant. That was over now. Not because he'd fought his way free, but because the universe had revealed that he'd never been a pawn at all. He'd been a king in a pawn's clothing. The ring pulsed on his hand, 9 colors shifting in the darkness. He could feel the other Horcruxes out there, one in Hogwarts, pulsing faintly. One somewhere in the countryside. One in a vault, Gringotts, he thought, which was ironic. One moving, which meant it was being carried. He'd find them all. Destroy them all. And then he'd end Tom Riddle. But more than that, more than just winning a war, he was going to build something. The magical world was broken. Corrupt institutions, enslaved species, hidden history, manipulated children sent off to die while old men moved pieces on a board. Harry was going to tear it all down and raise something worthy in its place. Not because he was the emperor of all magic. Because someone had to, and for the first time in history, someone could. He stayed on the roof until dawn, planning. When the sun rose over London, he went downstairs, where Creature had prepared breakfast for 7 and was humming something that sounded almost like a song. The war for the world began today. Harry was ready. Chapter 2, The World Bends. Harry ate breakfast standing up. It wasn't a conscious choice, his body simply refused to sit while his mind was already 3 moves ahead. Creature had outdone himself, eggs, bacon, toast, fresh fruit, and a pot of tea strong enough to strip paint. The old elf moved through the kitchen with a purpose he hadn't shown in years, and every time he passed Harry, his enormous eyes shone with something close to worship. Hermione came down first, already dressed, her hair pulled back in a practical knot and her beaded bag slung over one shoulder. She had parchment in hand, covered in her tight, precise handwriting. "I've been up since 4, she said, pouring tea. "The Avalon Compact, I found 3 references in books I brought from home. Peripheral mentions, footnotes that were clearly meant to be overlooked. But they all agree on one thing, the compact is self-enforcing. It's woven into the foundational magic of every institution established after Merlin's time. Which means when you walk into the ministry today and assert your authority, the building itself will respond. The wards, the enchantments, the magical infrastructure, they'll recognize you. Fudge can bluster all he wants, but he literally cannot override you within that building. The magic won't let him." Harry finished his eggs. "Good. What about the Wizengamot?" "That's trickier. The compact gives you authority over the Wizengamot, but the Wizengamot is made up of people, not enchantments. They can refuse to cooperate. They just can't legally act against you." Hermione flipped to a second page. "However, you hold 4 seats directly. Potter, Black, Peverell, and Gryffindor all carry Wizengamot seats. Slytherin's was dissolved after the Founders' era, but you could petition to reinstate it. That's 4 votes minimum, 5 if you push for Slytherin. I don't want to rule by committee vote." "No, but you want legitimacy. The compact gives you the legal right to override the Wizengamot, but if you do it too often without showing good faith, you'll have a rebellion on your hands. Even an emperor needs his lords to cooperate voluntarily, otherwise you spend all your time enforcing compliance instead of actually governing." Harry nodded. She was right, of course she was right. This was why he needed her. "Draft me something," he said. "A proclamation. Short, clear, no legalese. I wanted to say, the compact is active, I hold the throne, and these are my immediate intentions. We frame it as an opportunity, not a threat." Hermione was already writing. "What are your immediate intentions?" "Reform of creature legislation. Dissolution of the Muggleborn registration protocols. Umbridge has been building. Full investigation into the Department of Mysteries. And the formal declaration that Voldemort is an enemy of the magical state, not just Britain, but all of magical civilization." He paused. "Oh, and Fudge is fired." Hermione's quill stopped. "You can do that. The Minister for Magic serves at the pleasure of the Wizengamot, which operates under the authority of the compact. If the Emperor declares no confidence in the Minister, the position is vacated immediately." Harry smiled. "I read the book Ragnarok gave me. Cover to cover. Twice. When did you have time to, Aldrich's time sense? I can compress my perception of time when I need to focus. 8 hours of reading in about 40 minutes of real time. He shrugged at her expression. It's useful. Neville appeared in the doorway, dressed in practical robes with his wand holstered at his hip. He looked different this morning, taller somehow, though he hadn't grown overnight. It was posture. Purpose. Something in him had been waiting for permission to stand up straight, and Harry had given it. Morning, Neville said. Are we doing this? We're doing this. Daphne came down last, immaculate as always, not a hair out of place. She'd somehow produced a fresh set of robes, dark blue with silver trim, that made her look like she was attending a diplomatic function rather than a revolution. I fire-called my father last night, she said without preamble. He's cautiously optimistic. He'd like to meet you formally when there's time, but for today, he's prepared to publicly support your claim in the Wizengamot if it comes to a vote. It won't come to a vote, Harry said. But I appreciate the gesture. It'll matter that he was early. She inclined her head, the acknowledgement of a political point scored. The kitchen filled as Remus and Tonks joined them, Augusta arriving via flew in a shower of green flames and a hat that could generously be described as aggressive. 7 people around the table. Not enough for a government, but enough for a statement. Here's how today works, Harry said, and the room went quiet. I'm walking into the ministry at 9 o'clock. I'm going straight to the Wizengamot chamber, not the atrium, not the minister's office. The chamber. Hermione, you'll have the proclamation ready. Neville, you're with me. Daphne, you're with me. Augusta, I need you in the public gallery, visible, clearly supportive. And us? Tonks asked. Remus, you're living proof that I can do what I say I can do. If anyone questions whether I have the power to back my claims, you stand up and tell them you're a cured werewolf. Harry looked at Tonks. You're still an Auror. I need eyes inside the DMLE. Don't do anything to compromise your position yet, just watch. I want to know who in that department is loyal to the law and who's loyal to Fudge. Tonks nodded sharply. I can do that. One more thing. Harry drew his wand and held it up. The holly wand felt different now, smaller, somehow. Less significant. The magic in his blood was so much larger than what this wand could channel. He'd need to address that soon. But for today, it would serve. Nobody starts any fights. If someone draws on me, I'll handle it. If someone draws on any of you, shield and fall back. I don't want anyone hurt today. This isn't a battle, it's a coronation. He put the wand away. Let's go. The Ministry of Magic's atrium was its usual morning bustle, witches and wizards streaming from flue fireplaces, the golden fountain tinkling in the center, the security desk processing visitors with bored efficiency. Normal. Routine. Mundane. Harry stepped out of the flue and the fountain exploded. Not destructively, the water simply erupted upward in a massive geyser, then reformed. The golden statues that had always depicted a witch, wizard, centaur, goblin, and house elf, with the non-humans gazing adoringly upward at the magical humans, shuddered and changed. The metal flowed like liquid, reshaping itself. When it settled, the 5 figures stood as equals, side by side, and above them hovered a crown of golden water that caught the light like a promise. The atrium went silent. Hundreds of ministry workers froze mid-step, staring at the transformed fountain, then turning to find the source of the disturbance. Harry walked forward. Neville on his right. Daphne on his left. Hermione a step behind with a scroll in her hands. He didn't hurry. He didn't posture. He walked like a man entering his own home, because technically, he was. The magic of the ministry pressed against him like a dog recognizing its master. He could feel the building's wards reaching out, tasting his signature, finding the Pendragon bloodline and responding with something embarrassingly close to joy. Lights brightened as he passed. Doors opened before he reached them. The elevator at the end of the atrium pinged and opened without being called. Halt! The security wizard scrambled out from behind his desk, wand drawn but not raised. You can't, identification. Harry didn't stop walking. He held up his right hand, the ring clearly visible, and let a fraction of the Pendragon authority pulse outward, not a spell, not an attack, just presence. The security wizard's eyes went wide, his wand lowered of its own accord, and he stepped back as if shoved by an invisible hand. The Emperor of all magic requires no identification in his own building, Daphne said as they passed, her voice carrying across the silent atrium. If you wish to announce him, his title is His Imperial Majesty, Harry James Potter, of Houses Potter, Black, Peveril, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Emrys, Lefay, Pendragon, and Aldrich. Harry had to suppress a smile. Daphne had a flair for the dramatic that was proving immediately useful. They reached the elevator. Stepped inside. The doors closed on a tableau of frozen, staring ministry workers, and then the whispers began, rising like a wave behind them. Level 2, Harry said. The elevator moved instantly, not bothering with its usual announcements. The fountain, Hermione said from behind him. Did you do that on purpose? No. That was the building responding to the compact activating. Harry watched the floors pass. The ministry was built on Pendragon land with wards keyed to the compact. It's been dormant for 1500 years, it's waking up. It's going to cause a panic. Good. Panicked people look for authority. I intend to provide it. The elevator opened onto level 2, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Harry didn't go in. He continued down the corridor toward the staircase that led to level 10, the Wizengamot chambers. He could feel people following now, drawn by curiosity or alarm or both. By the time he reached the heavy oak doors of the chamber, he had an entourage of at least 30 ministry workers trailing behind him. The doors to the Wizengamot chamber opened at his approach, swinging wide without being touched, the ancient enchantments on them singing to life for the first time in centuries. The chamber beyond was circular, tiered, and empty, no session was scheduled today. The Wizengamot benches rose in concentric semicircles around a central floor, the chief warlock's elevated seat at the far end. Harry walked to the center of the chamber floor and stopped. Hermione. She stepped forward, unrolled the scroll, and cast Sonorous on her throat. Then she began to read, not in her usual rapid-fire lecture voice, but slowly, clearly, letting each word land. Let it be known to all magical peoples that the Avalon Compact, dormant since the age of Merlin, has been fulfilled. The 9 bloodlines have converged in a single heir. Harry James Potter, of Houses Potter, Black, Peveril, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Emrys, Lefay, Pendragon, and Aldrich, stands as true Emperor of all magic, supreme authority over all magical civilization, as established by Merlin Emrys himself at the founding of magical governance. Her voice rang through the chamber, amplified by both spell and architecture. The people who'd followed them in stood at the doorway, listening in stunned silence. More were arriving every moment, word was spreading through the ministry like fire through dry grass. His Imperial Majesty declares the following immediate intentions, Hermione continued. First, the formal recognition of Lord Voldemort as an enemy of all magical civilization, and the mobilization of resources for his immediate destruction. Second, the dissolution of all discriminatory creature legislation and the beginning of equal rights reform. Third, a vote of no confidence in Minister Cornelius Fudge, effective immediately, pending investigation into corruption and dereliction of duty. Fourth, a full investigation into the Department of Mysteries and its operations. Fifth, an open invitation to all members of the Wizengamot to attend a formal session tomorrow at noon to discuss the transition of governance. Hermione rolled the scroll and stepped back. Harry stood in the silence that followed, letting it breathe. Then chaos erupted. Everyone was talking at once, shouting, questioning, denying. Harry let it wash over him for exactly 10 seconds. Then he raised his hand, and the Pendragon command magic pulsed. Silence. Not forced, not a silencing charm, but the kind of silence that falls when something larger than individual will enters a room. Every person in the chamber felt compelled to listen, not because they were magically coerced but because something deep and ancient in the fabric of British magic itself insisted that when the Emperor spoke, you heard him. I understand this is sudden, Harry said, and his voice carried without amplification, the chamber's acoustics bending to serve him. I understand there will be doubt, resistance, and fear. Those are reasonable responses. But the compact is not a negotiation. It is not a claim to be verified by committee. It is a fact of magical law, the most fundamental magical law in existence, and it has been fulfilled. He turned slowly, addressing the growing crowd. I am not here to be a tyrant. I have no interest in ruling your daily lives or controlling your choices. But the magical world is at war with a dark lord who has cheated death itself, governed by a minister who denied that fact for a year while people died, and operating under laws that enslave sentient beings and persecute people for the circumstances of their birth. His voice hardened. That is over. As of today, that is over. A voice from the crowd, Percy Weasley, Harry realized with a jolt. Percy, in his ministry robes, his face pale but determined. You're a 16-year-old boy. You can't simply walk in here and declare yourself emperor. There are processes, the process is the compact itself, Hermione cut in, stepping forward. Section 3, Article 1, when the nine converge, the crown awakens, and no earthly authority may stand above it. The ministry was built under the compact, Mr. Weasley. This building's own magic has already recognized Lord Potter's authority. Surely you noticed the fountain. Percy's mouth opened. Closed. He looked at the doors of the chamber, which had opened themselves. At the lights, which burned brighter than they ever had. At the floor beneath his feet, where, Harry noticed for the first time, a mosaic he'd never seen before was glowing faintly. A crown, wrought in gold tile, directly beneath Harry's feet. It hadn't been visible before. The building was literally unveiling itself for him. This is unprecedented, by definition, Daphne said smoothly. It hasn't happened in 1500 years. But the legal framework exists. The compact is older than the Wisengamot, older than the ministry, older than Hogwarts itself. It supersedes all subsequent legislation. She stepped up beside Harry, addressing the crowd with the practiced ease of someone raised in political salons. Lord Potter is not asking for your approval. He is informing you of reality. How you respond to that reality will determine your place in what comes next. It was, Harry reflected, exactly the right thing to say to a room full of politicians and bureaucrats. Not a threat, a signal. Get on board or get left behind. Where's Fudge? Harry asked. The crowd parted. Somewhere in the back, a paper airplane memo was already zooming upward through the ceiling. Someone had sent for the minister. Harry could feel him approaching. Actually, the man's magical signature was agitated, spiking with fear and indignation in equal measure. 2 floors up, moving fast. He's coming, Harry said calmly. Good. They waited. The crowd grew, more and more ministry workers packing into the gallery seats, word spreading through the building at the speed of gossip. Harry stood in the center of the floor, unbothered, patient. Neville stood at his right shoulder like a soldier at attention. Daphne stood at his left like a diplomat at court. Hermione had taken a seat in the first row, quill out, recording everything. The doors burst open and Cornelius Fudge strode in, flanked by 2 Aurors and wearing an expression of purple outrage that reminded Harry uncomfortably of Uncle Vernon. What is the meaning of this? Fudge bellowed. Potter, you are not authorized, this is a restricted, Minister Fudge. Harry didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. The chamber carried his words with crystal clarity. You are relieved of your position, effective immediately. Fudge stopped walking. His mouth worked soundlessly. On what? You can't. By whose authority? Mine. Harry let a sliver of command magic color the word, not enough to compel, just enough to make the air feel heavier. The Avalon Compact recognizes me as supreme magical authority. The Minister for Magic serves under that authority. And I have no confidence in your ability to lead this nation through a war you spent a year pretending didn't exist. This is madness. Fudge looked around wildly for support. The two Aurors behind him were staring at Harry's ring with expressions that suggested they were rapidly reassessing their career choices. I am the democratically elected, you were appointed by the Wizengamot, not elected by the people. And the Wizengamot operates under the compact. Harry's voice was still even, still measured. He wasn't angry, anger would have been easy. This was something colder. You failed to protect your people. You allowed a mass murderer to infiltrate your prison. You sent dementors after children. You ran a smear campaign against a 15-year-old boy instead of preparing for war. He took one step toward Fudge. People are dead because of your cowardice. That stops now. Fudge's hand was shaking. His wand hand, Harry noticed. The Wizengamot will never accept, the Wizengamot will meet tomorrow at noon. I suspect they'll be very cooperative. Harry turned his back on the man, a deliberate dismissal, a statement of exactly how much of a threat he considered Cornelius Fudge. You may keep your personal effects and your pension. You are no longer minister. Leave this building. I will not. Harry turned back. Just his head, looking over his shoulder. He let his eyes show the full weight of what he was, 9 bloodlines, immeasurable power, ancient authority, and he focused it on Cornelius Fudge like a spotlight. Fudge went white. His bluster died mid-word. The two Aurors beside him took an involuntary step backward. Leave, Harry said softly. Fudge left. The chamber was silent as the former minister's footsteps echoed away. Then, from somewhere in the upper gallery, someone started clapping. A slow, deliberate clap that was joined by another, then another, until half the room was applauding, not all of it, Harry noted. Not even most of it. But enough. The people who were clapping were the ones who'd watched Fudge ignore Voldemort's return and felt helpless to stop him. The ones who'd lost family members to Death Eaters while the Ministry stuck its head in the sand. Harry raised a hand and the applause died. I'll need an interim minister until proper elections can be organized. Someone competent, honest, and brave enough to govern during wartime. He looked at the crowd, searching faces, reading magical signatures, using every sense available to him. Amelia Bones. A woman in the middle of the gallery stood. Harry had met her once, at his hearing, the previous year. She was square-jawed, severe, and had the magical signature of someone who'd been fighting dark wizards since before Harry was born. Her monocle glinted in the chamber's light. Madam Bones, Harry said. I'm told you're the most competent person in this building. Would you serve as interim minister? Bones looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable, she was too experienced a politician to show her hand easily. But Harry's enhanced senses caught the calculus happening behind her eyes, surprise, skepticism, assessment, and finally, decisively, resolution. If the compact is genuine, she said, her voice carrying clearly, then I accept. But I'll want verification. Independent verification. Have Gringotts send the inheritance test results. Have the Department of Mysteries verify the compact's activation. Have the unspeakables examine the building's wards, they'll confirm they've changed. Harry smiled. I'm not asking you to take it on faith. I'm asking you to do your job and investigate. The truth will bear scrutiny. Bones nodded once. Crisp. Professional. Then we have a great deal of work to do. We do. Harry turned to address the full chamber one final time. Tomorrow at noon, I will address the full Wizengamot. Attendance is strongly encouraged. We have a war to win and a world to rebuild. I intend to do both, and I'd rather do them with willing allies than over unwilling opposition. He paused. But make no mistake, I will do them regardless. He walked out of the chamber. Neville, Daphne, and Hermione fell in behind him. The crowd parted before them like water before a ship's prow. They made it to the elevator before Daphne broke. Not broke down, broke into a grin that transformed her entire face from composed aristocrat to something younger, fiercer, alive with exhilaration. That, she breathed, was the most extraordinary thing I have ever witnessed. Neville was shaking his head, but he was grinning too. You just fired the Minister of Magic. Harry, you fired the bloody minister. He fired himself a year ago when he let Voldemort operate unopposed. Harry punched the button for the atrium. But yes. That felt good. Hermione was the voice of pragmatism, as always. Bones is a strong choice. She's respected across political lines, she's competent, and she has no love for fudge. But Harry, Lucius Malfoy is going to hear about this within the hour. Within the minute, probably. I saw Malfoy's people in the gallery. What do you expect him to do? Harry considered it as the elevator rose. He'll try to frame this as a coup. Dark magic, imperious curse, delusional teenager with a power fantasy, whatever narrative he thinks will stick. He'll work the pureblood families, try to form a coalition of resistance. And he'll go to Voldemort and try to sell himself as the solution. And your response? The elevator opened onto the atrium. The transformed fountain glittered in the center, its new configuration already drawing stares and whispers. Harry walked toward the fireplaces, his people around him like a protective formation. My response is to be so publicly, overwhelmingly legitimate that his narrative doesn't hold. The inheritance test is verified by goblins, who have no love for wizards and no reason to lie. The building itself is responding to me. The compact is self-enforcing. He grabbed a handful of Flo powder. And tonight, I'm going to do something that makes it very clear this isn't a power fantasy. What? Neville asked. Harry's smile was sharp. I'm going to destroy another Horcrux. Publicly. They returned to Grimmauld Place to find it under siege, not physically, but informationally. Owls were arriving by the dozen, banking around the chimney pots like a feathered cyclone. Howlers, letters, newspapers, and what appeared to be several formal summonses from various ministry departments. Creature was batting owls away from the kitchen with a broom and looking happier than Harry had ever seen him. Let the owls in, Harry said. Sort the mail, anything from Dumbledore, the Order, or the Wizengamot goes in one pile. Hate mail and howlers go in another. Anything from Gringotts or international sources goes in a third. Creature sorts, the elf announced triumphantly, and vanished the broom in favor of summoning a series of bins. Harry turned to his team. We have until tonight. Let's use the time. What followed was 4 hours of the most intense strategic planning Harry had ever been part of. Hermione spread parchments across the table and built a legal framework for imperial governance. More actions. Write the next chapter now. Chapter 3, Court of Wolves. Harry didn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. His body thrummed with purpose, the Aldrich constitution rendering exhaustion irrelevant while his mind worked through scenarios at speed. He sat in the Black Library with a cup of tea gone cold, turning over the problem of Malfoy Manor from every angle. Voldemort was there. The snake was there. One final Horcrux between Tom Riddle and mortality. The obvious play was to go in hard and fast, overwhelming force, destroy the snake, kill Voldemort in the same strike. The combined power of 9 houses could level that manor and everything in it without breaking a sweat. But there were innocents inside. House elves, certainly. Possibly prisoners. And Narcissa Malfoy, who, according to Daphne's intelligence, had never taken the mark and was trapped between a fanatical master and a husband who'd gambled their family's future on the wrong horse. And there was Draco. Harry didn't like Draco Malfoy. 5 years of antagonism didn't evaporate overnight. But Draco was 16, the same age as Harry, and the low fate sight showed Harry something about the Malfoy heir that complicated things considerably. Draco's fate thread was conflicted, pulling in two directions simultaneously, one toward darkness and one desperately reaching toward anything that might be an alternative. Draco Malfoy didn't want to be where he was. He just couldn't see any other option. That was a problem for after the battle. Tonight, the problem was tactical. "You're brooding." Daphne appeared in the doorway for the second night running, this time fully dressed, as if she'd never gone to bed at all. She carried a sheaf of parchments and a bottle of what appeared to be fire whiskey. "I'm planning," Harry corrected. "You're doing both." She sat across from him and spread the parchments on the table between them. "I've been working on the Malfoy Manor problem. The estate has 7 layers of wards. I know because my father helped design the 4th layer 20 years ago as a business arrangement." She tapped a hand-drawn diagram. Ancient family protections, blood wards, anti-apparition, anti-portkey, detection grids, physical repulsion, and a final layer that's purely offensive. Anyone who breaches the outer 6 gets hit with a cascade of curses. 7 layers. Impressive for a private residence. Lucius doesn't do anything by halves. Daphne traced the ward structure with her fingertip. A normal assault would require a team of 12 cursebreakers working for 6 hours minimum. Even then, the blood wards would regenerate faster than they could be dismantled. "I'm not a normal assault." Harry picked up the diagram, studying it. With his enhanced magical senses, he could practically feel the ward structure from here. Malfoy Manor was a bright, complex knot in the fabric of magical Britain. The Pendragon's sovereign authority, how does it interact with private wards? Daphne's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. The compact establishes the Emperor's right of entry to any magical dwelling in cases of, how does Hermione's framework phrase it? Clear and present danger to the magical state. You're arguing that Voldemort's presence constitutes that. I'm arguing that a Dark Lord with an army hiding in a private residence while plotting genocide constitutes that, yes. Harry set down the diagram. The Pendragon authority should override at least the upper ward layers, the ones that derive from ministry-granted land rights. The blood wards are older, though. Those might resist. They will resist. Blood wards don't care about political authority, they care about blood. Good thing I have black blood, then. Harry tapped the ring on his hand. The Malfoys married into the Black family. Narcissa is a Black by birth. The blood wards will recognize me as family. Daphne stared at him. Then a slow smile spread across her face, predatory, appreciative. You're going to walk through their wards like they don't exist. More or less. She shook her head. That's terrifying, Potter. You know that, right? The idea that nowhere is safe from you. Nowhere that shelters a Dark Lord is safe from me, Harry corrected. Anyone who isn't harboring the most dangerous wizard in history has nothing to worry about. He stood, rolling the diagram and tucking it into his robes. But not tonight. Tonight I need to handle something else first. The castle. Harry looked at her, surprised. How did you know? Because you need a seat of power before you confront Voldemort. If you kill him while operating out of a London townhouse, you're just a powerful wizard who won a fight. If you kill him from an established imperial court with proper legitimacy and ceremony, she spread her hands. You're an emperor defending his realm. Remind me never to play chess against you. I'd destroy you. She said it without a trace of false modesty. When are you going? Now. Tonight. Harry moved toward the door. I can feel the castle waiting. Caer Emrys, the Pendragon seat. It's been empty for 1500 years, and its wards recognized me 2 days ago. I need to go there, wake it fully, and establish it as the imperial court before tomorrow. Alone. No one else can activate it. The wards respond only to Pendragon blood. Daphne stood, brushing down her robes. Then I'll come as far as the boundary. Someone should know where you are. Harry considered arguing, decided against it. She was right. And the company wasn't unwelcome. They apparat to Wales at 2 in the morning. Harry had followed the Pendragon bloodline's pull, a compass needle in his bones pointing northwest, toward a specific point in the Snowdonian highlands that no map, magical or mundane, had ever marked. They appeared on a mountainside shrouded in mist, the air cold and sharp with the smell of wet stone and wild thyme. Here. Daphne pulled her cloak tighter against the wind. The landscape was beautiful but utterly empty, bare rock, heather, and fog. Here. Harry could feel it. Beneath the mist, beneath the apparent emptiness, something vast was sleeping. The wards weren't just concealment, they were existence denial. The castle didn't simply hide from perception, it existed in a fold of space that normal reality flowed around without touching. More sophisticated than a Fidelius by orders of magnitude. Harry raised his right hand. The ring blazed, not all 9 colors, but one specifically, the deep gold of Pendragon. He pressed his palm against what appeared to be empty air and spoke. Not English. Not Latin. Something older, a language that came from the bloodline itself, words his throat had never formed but his blood had always known. The air split. Reality folded open like a curtain being drawn, and behind it, Daphne made a sound. Not a gasp, something more involuntary. A punch of breath, torn from her by sheer awe. Heir sat in a valley that shouldn't have existed, couldn't have existed, given the geography of the mountainside they'd been standing on. A valley of impossible green, fed by a river that ran silver in the moonlight, and at its heart, a castle that made Hogwarts look like a country cottage. It wasn't larger than Hogwarts, not exactly. But where Hogwarts was a school grown organically over centuries, added to and modified by 1,000 hands, Heir was a single vision made manifest. White stone that seemed to glow from within. Towers that spiraled upward in mathematically perfect proportions, their tips lost in clouds that existed only within this folded space. A wall surrounding the grounds that thrummed with magic so old and deep it made Harry's teeth vibrate. And it was awake. Harry could feel it, the castle had felt him coming and stirred from its millennium-and-a-half sleep. Lights were appearing in windows. The great gate was swinging open, soundless despite its immensity. The magic of the place was reaching out to him like a child reaching for a parent, desperate, joyful, recognizing. "Stay here," Harry told Daphne. "Until I've fully activated the wards. The castle doesn't know you yet, it might be defensive." She nodded. Her eyes were still fixed on Heir, her aristocratic composure shattered by the sheer impossibility of what she was seeing. "Harry, this has been here for 1,500 years. Hidden. Waiting." Harry walked forward. "Waiting for me." He crossed the valley floor, the grass was real, soft and damp beneath his feet, and wildflowers he couldn't identify grew in luminous clusters along the path. The river murmured as he crossed its bridge, and he could have sworn the water rippled in a pattern that looked like a bow. The castle gates stood fully open, and as Harry stepped through them, the magic of Heir slammed into him. Not attacking, embracing. 15 centuries of accumulated power rushed into him like a river breaking through a dam. The castle's wards, its defenses, its enchantments, thousands of them, layered by Pendragon wizards over generations, all snapped awake and connected to his magical core simultaneously. For a dizzying moment, Harry was the castle. He could feel every stone, every room, every passage and secret chamber. He knew the layout instinctively: throne room on the ground floor, council chambers above, residential wings east and west, libraries and workrooms below. And the throne. Harry walked through corridors of white stone that lit themselves as he approached and dimmed respectfully behind him. Tapestries that had hung in stasis for 1,500 years rippled in a non-existent breeze as he passed, depicting scenes from Pendragon history, from the first king through the line's disappearance. The final tapestry was blank, waiting for new history to be woven into it. The throne room was vast. Vaulted ceiling lost in shadow above, with pillars of white stone wrapped in veins of gold. The floor was polished to mirror brightness, and at the far end, on a raised dais approached by 7 steps, sat the throne. It was not what Harry expected. Not gold, not jeweled, not ostentatious. It was carved from a single block of stone so white it almost hurt to look at, simple, elegant, powerful in its restraint. Behind it, set into the wall, was a mosaic of the same 9-pointed crown that had appeared on his heritage parchment. Harry climbed the 7 steps. Turned. Saturday. The castle sang. There was no other word for it. Every ward, every enchantment, every piece of magic woven into Heir emeries for 15 centuries activated simultaneously in a single, harmonious chord. The throne blazed white, not burning Harry but flowing through him, completing a circuit that had been open for a millennium and a half. The crown he could feel but not see became momentarily visible, a circlet of white gold light hovering above his head, the 9 house sigils orbiting it like planets around a sun. And across magical Britain, across magical Europe, across the entire magical world, something stirred. Every ministry building's wards pulsed once. Every magical school's foundations hummed. Every enchantment built under the Compact's authority felt the throne occupied and acknowledged it. In Gringotts, Ragnarok felt it and smiled. In Hogwarts, Dumbledore felt it and closed his eyes in something like prayer. In Malfoy Manor, Voldemort felt it and went very, very still. Harry sat on the throne of Heir emeries and breathed. The power settled. The song faded to a hum, present but not overwhelming. The castle was his. The throne was his. The authority was his. He was emperor in truth now. Not just by blood, by seat. By right. By the acknowledgement of magical reality itself. He stood. There was work to do. It took him an hour to fully activate the castle's residential spaces, adjust the wards to admit his people, and familiarize himself with the layout. Heir emeries was enormous, large enough to house a full court of hundreds, but Harry focused on the essentials. Personal quarters for himself and his inner circle. A council chamber for strategic planning. The throne room for formal audiences. And the war room, a circular chamber deep in the castle's heart that contained something extraordinary. A map. Not paper, a living 3-dimensional illusion of magical Britain, showing every magical settlement, every ward boundary, every concentration of magical energy in real time. It had been dormant for 15 centuries, and the geography had changed, coastlines shifted, cities grown, but the map was self-correcting, pulling information from the ley lines that crisscrossed the island. Within minutes of Harry's presence, it was updating itself, showing modern magical Britain in extraordinary detail. Including a dark knot of energy in Wiltshire that pulsed with malice. Malfoy Manor. Harry stared at it for a long moment. He could see the ward structure from here, 7 layers, just as Daphne had described. And inside, at the center of that dark knot, 2 distinct sources of evil, one vast and conscious, Voldemort himself, and one smaller, coiled around the larger like a living necklace. Nagini. Harry reached out with the Peveril death sight, stretching his perception across the distance between Wales and Wiltshire. The map helped, it was connected to the ley lines, which were connected to everything. He could feel the snake, could feel the soul fragment inside it. Could he destroy it from here? The distance was enormous. But the Emery's amplification was vast, and the ley line network beneath the castle was essentially a magical power grid he could tap at will. If he routed the death magic through the ley lines, used the castle's connection to the ward network of Britain as a channel. He could. He was certain he could. Harry reached. Through the ley lines, through the magical infrastructure of Britain, through the very fabric of enchanted reality, he reached toward that dark coil of corrupted life in Wiltshire and found the Horcrux. The soul fragment in Nagini was the weakest of all, the last piece, the thinnest shaving of what had once been Tom Riddle's whole self. It was barely coherent. Barely holding together. Harry touched it with death magic, and it crumbled. In Malfoy Manor, Nagini convulsed. The great snake thrashed once, twice, and then went still. Dead. Not from external injury, from the sudden absence of the magic that had been sustaining her far beyond any natural serpent's lifespan. Without the Horcrux, she was simply a very old snake whose time had come decades ago. In the castle's war room, Harry felt the last Horcrux die and let out a long breath. "It's done," he said to the empty room. "He's mortal. Voldemort would know. He'd feel the last anchor break, would feel the terrifying vulnerability of being one single, fragile soul in one single, fragile body. For the first time in decades, Tom Riddle could truly die. And Harry was coming for him. He left the war room and headed back toward the castle entrance. Dawn was breaking over the hidden valley, golden light spilling over the mountains that ringed this folded space, turning the river to molten amber. Beautiful. Peaceful. A place worth protecting. Daphne was exactly where he'd left her, sitting on a rock at the valley's edge, though she'd conjured a blanket and appeared to be reading a book by wandlight. She looked up as he approached. That took longer than expected. "Everything all right?" "Better than all right." Harry extended his hand. "Come inside. The wards know you now, you're safe." She took his hand, her fingers cold from the mountain air, and stood. As they walked back toward the castle, Harry told her what he'd done. Activating the throne. The living map. "And, you destroyed the snake." She stopped walking. "From here?" "From Wales, you reached into Wiltshire and destroyed a Horcrux. Through the ley line network. The castle is connected to everything. It was built on the convergence point of 7 major ley lines. 1,500 years of accumulated magical energy, and it all answers to the throne." Harry shrugged. It was the equivalent of flipping a switch. Daphne stared at him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable, something between awe and a very practical recalculation of exactly how powerful the person beside her was. "He's mortal," she said. "Voldemort is mortal right now. As of about 10 minutes ago, yes." "Then why aren't you already at Malfoy Manor finishing this?" Harry looked at the sunrise painting the valley gold. "Because I want everyone to know. When I kill Voldemort, I don't want it to happen in the dark, in secret, with only his Death Eaters as witnesses. I want it to be public. I want the magical world to see their nightmare end with their own eyes." He turned to Daphne. "And because I want to give the people inside that manor who aren't Voldemort a chance to choose a different side before I come through the door." "Narcissa," Daphne said. "Draco. Among others. There are Death Eaters in there who took the mark out of fear, not conviction. Voldemort rules through terror. I want to offer an alternative before I end him. Anyone who lays down their wand gets mercy. Anyone who doesn't, doesn't." "Exactly." They entered the castle together. Harry showed her through the corridors, the council chamber, the residential wings, the libraries. Daphne moved through Heir Emery's with wide eyes and quick hands, touching the walls, feeling the magic. She was a pragmatist to her core, but even pragmatists could be odd. "This is where you'll rule from," she said. It wasn't a question. "This is where I'll build from." "I don't like the word rule, it implies a boot on someone's neck. I want to build. Create. Improve." Harry opened a door onto a balcony that overlooked the valley. "But yes. Heir Emery's will be the seat of the Imperial Court. You'll need staff. Advisors beyond our current group. Diplomats, administrators, researchers, I know. But first things first." Harry turned from the view. "We go back to London. I gather everyone. I tell them Voldemort is mortal. And then, today, we end this war. They apparat back to Grimmauld Place at 6 in the morning. The house was already waking, Creature preparing breakfast, Hermione in the library, Neville doing what appeared to be push-ups in the drawing room. Augusta's vulture hat was visible through the parlor door, bobbing above the prophet. Meeting in the kitchen, Harry said as he walked through the door. Everyone. Now. They assembled in minutes. Harry stood at the head of the table and said it simply. I destroyed the last Horcrux. The snake is dead. Voldemort is mortal. Silence. Then Hermione's hand flew to her mouth. Neville went pale, then flushed. Remus gripped the table edge so hard his knuckles went white. Tonks let out a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. When? Remus asked. An hour ago. From the throne of Heir Emrys. Harry looked around the table. The Pendragon Castle is activated and the Imperial Court is established. I'm sitting on the convergence of 7 ley lines with the entire magical infrastructure of Britain answering to me. And Voldemort is hiding in Lucius Malfoy's basement with no safety net. So what's the plan? Neville asked. He was already on his feet, hand drifting to his wand like a soldier hearing the call to muster. Public. Open. Undeniable. Harry sat. I'm going to send a message to Malfoy Manor. Directly. I'm going to tell everyone inside that Voldemort is mortal, that I'm coming for him at noon today, and that anyone who wants to live should leave before I arrive. You're giving them warning. Tonks looked skeptical. That gives him time to run. He won't run. Harry was certain of this, as certain as his Le Fate sight could make him. Voldemort's pride wouldn't allow retreat. The Dark Lord would stay, would fight, would try to prove he was still the most terrifying being in magical Britain. Tom Riddle has never retreated from a challenge in his life. He'll stay. He'll tell himself it's a trap I'm walking into, because the alternative, that I'm genuinely more powerful than him, is something his ego cannot accept. And the Death Eaters? Some will run. Good, fewer obstacles. Some will stay and fight. They've chosen their fate. Harry looked at Neville. I need you to coordinate with Amelia Bones. Have Auror stationed around the manor's anti-apparition boundary. Anyone who flees gets arrested, not killed. Trial, due process. Even Death Eaters. And you? Hermione's voice was tight. You're going in alone. I'm going in alone. Harry held up his hand before the objections could start. Not because I'm being reckless. Because the combined power of 9 houses exceeds anything Voldemort can field, and the presence of other people near me during the fight increases the risk of collateral damage. He looked at Hermione steadily. I'm not sacrificing myself. I'm not walking into danger I can't handle. I'm ending a war against an enemy who is now vastly outmatched. Trust me. Hermione held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded, a small, tight movement. Trust. I'll coordinate with Bones, Neville said. I'll handle the press, Daphne said. This needs coverage. The world needs to see it end. I'll contact the Order, Remus added. Dumbledore, Moody, Kingsley, they should be there. Not fighting, but witnessing. Harry nodded. Good. Everyone has their roles. We execute at noon. He stood. But first, one more thing. I need to send a message to Draco Malfoy. Every head turned. Draco, Hermione repeated flatly. You want to warn Draco Malfoy? I want to offer him a way out. Harry met their eyes, saw the skepticism, the years of antagonism, the reasonable objection. Draco is 16 years old with a father who pledged him to a madman. The fate sight shows me he's not committed, he's trapped. I'm not asking you to like him. I'm telling you that I can see his future splitting 2 ways, and one of those ways involves him helping people I can't reach otherwise. What kind of help? Daphne asked. Her tone was more curious than skeptical. She'd grown up adjacent to Draco, knew the family dynamics. Narcissa. The prisoners in the manor's dungeons. The Death Eaters who want out but are too afraid to move. Harry pulled parchment from the table and began writing. If Draco can get the non-combatants out before I arrive, it simplifies everything. And if he takes the message straight to Voldemort? Then Voldemort knows I'm coming, which he'll know anyway once the snake dies. It changes nothing tactically. Harry finished writing, folded the parchment, and sealed it. Creature. The elf appeared instantly. Master Emperor. Take this letter to Draco Malfoy. Personally. Tell him it's from the Emperor and that I'm offering him a choice. Don't wait for a response, just deliver it and return. Creature delivers. The elf took the letter, bowed low, and vanished with a crack. Harry checked the clock. 6:30. 5.5 hours until noon. Everyone eat, he said. Then move. We end this today. The morning burned fast. Harry spent the hours in focused preparation, not of spells or strategies, but of himself. He stood in the drawing room with his eyes closed, integrating the 9 bloodline gifts into a cohesive whole for combat. The war magic of Potter, aggressive, fast, instinctive. The shadowcraft of Black, misdirection, flanking, striking from angles the enemy couldn't predict. The death mastery of Peveril, the ability to sever the connection between soul and body with a touch. Gryffindor's courage aura, not just bravery, but the projection of confidence that unnerved enemies. Slytherin's mind arts, reading intention before it became action. Emery's amplification, turning every working into something 3 times its normal force. Lu Fei fate sight, seeing the threads of combat probability in real time, knowing where an attack would come before the attacker decided to throw it. Pendragon authority, command that resonated in the bones of those who heard it. And Aldrich's constitution, the certainty that nothing Voldemort could throw at him would destroy him permanently. Combined, these gifts didn't just make Harry powerful. They made him inevitable. At 9 o'clock, Creature returned. Letter is delivered, the elf reported. Young Master Malfoy read it. He was afraid. Creature's wrinkled face twisted with something like sympathy. Very afraid. But he nodded. He said, the elf concentrated. Tell him I understand. Those were his words. Harry nodded. Good. Whether Draco would actually act on it remained to be seen, but the offer was made. The choice was his. At 10 o'clock, Neville Fire called from the Ministry. Amelia Bones had mobilized 30 Aurors, the entire ready force, and they were taking position around Malfoy Manor's perimeter. The anti-apparition wards meant the force couldn't get close, but they'd be there to intercept anyone fleeing. At 10:30, Daphne reported that the Prophet was running a special edition. Headline, Emperor 2 confront Dark Lord at noon, all Horcruxes destroyed. The magical world knew what was coming. People were gathering in Diagon Alley, in Hogsmeade, in the Ministry atrium, anywhere there was a public information board or a wireless set. The WWN was doing live coverage. At 11 o'clock, Dumbledore arrived at Grimmauld Place. The old wizard looked different from their last encounter, less burdened. His restored hand flexed easily at his side, and his blue eyes held a clarity that had been clouded for months. He came alone, without the usual Order escort. Harry, Dumbledore said. I wanted to speak with you before I go. Harry gestured to a chair. Sit. We have an hour. They sat in the parlor, just the two of them. Harry had sent the others off on their final preparations, and the house was quiet. I have spent the night considering my failures, Dumbledore said without preamble. No twinkle. No deflection. Just an old man taking inventory. Not all of them, that would take considerably longer than one night. But the failures specific to you. Harry said nothing. Let him talk. I told myself I was protecting you. That ignorance was safety. That if you didn't know what you were, the world couldn't use you for it. Dumbledore's voice was quiet, measured. But the truth is simpler and less flattering. I was afraid of what you might become if you knew. Afraid that power of that magnitude in someone so young might produce another Tom Riddle. Dumbledore flinched. Yes. I feared it. You and Tom share certain superficial similarities, orphaned, powerful, marked by destiny. I convinced myself that limiting your access to power was the same as preventing you from being corrupted by it. It wasn't. No. It wasn't. It was control disguised as protection. Dumbledore met Harry's eyes. I am sorry. Not conditionally. Not with caveats. I am sorry, and I was wrong. Harry let the apology settle. It was real, he could feel its sincerity with every enhanced sense he possessed. And it mattered, not because Harry needed Dumbledore's validation, but because the old man's honesty meant the relationship could be rebuilt on something real. I'm not Tom Riddle, Harry said. I never was. The difference between us was never about access to power, it was about what we'd experienced of love. Tom grew up without any. I had it, imperfectly, intermittently, but I had it. That's what makes the difference. Not ignorance. Love. Dumbledore's eyes were very bright. He didn't speak for a moment, couldn't, perhaps. Your mother said something very similar once, the old wizard whispered. On the day she discovered she was pregnant with you. She said, our child will know love before they know power. And that's how I'll keep them safe. He smiled, sad, fond, aching. She was right. As she usually was. Harry felt something unlock in his chest, a knot he hadn't known was there. His mother. Who he'd never known, but who had known him. Who had chosen love over fear even while hiding her own heritage, even while pretending to be less than she was. He stood. Offered Dumbledore his hand. Come with me today, Harry said. Not to fight. To witness. The man who killed your family, who started both these wars, watch me end him. Dumbledore took his hand and rose. His grip was firm, the restored hand strong and sure. It would be my honor, the old wizard said. At 11:45, Harry stood in the foyer of Grimmauld Place and gathered himself. He'd changed robes, not consciously choosing ceremony, but the magic seemed to demand it. His robes were deep black with the 9 house crests woven in living thread along the collar and cuffs. The ring blazed on his hand. He'd transfigured his hair shorter, a practical choice, and cleaned his glasses, though he realized with distant amusement that he no longer needed them. The Aldrich healing had quietly corrected his vision days ago. He took them off, vanished them, and the world was crystal clear. Ready? Neville asked from behind him. Harry turned. His inner circle was assembled, Hermione, Neville, Daphne, Remus, Tonks, Augusta, Dumbledore. They wouldn't enter the manor with him, but they'd be there. Bearing witness. Ready. Harry smiled, not fierce, not grim. Calm. The calm of absolute certainty. Let's finish this. They apparat as a group, Harry bringing them all, his magic expansive enough to side along 6 people without strain. They appeared on a hilltop overlooking the Malfoy estate, half a mile from the manor's outer wards. The aura perimeter was visible below, 30 figures in red robes stationed at intervals around the property's boundary. Malfoy Manor sat in its grounds like a wound, beautiful architecture tainted by the dark magic radiating from within. Harry could see it all with his enhanced senses, the 7 ward layers, the Death Eaters inside, he counted 14 magical signatures beyond the wards, and at the center, Voldemort. A signature like a black hole, vast, cold, hungry. But also damaged. Harry could see the difference from what it had been. The soul fragmentation had left Voldemort's magic unstable, his power flickering rather than steady. The loss of the Horcruxes hadn't just made him mortal, it had weakened him. Each destroyed fragment had taken a piece of his power with it. He was still dangerous. Still the darkest wizard of the age. But he was no longer what he'd been. And Harry was so much more than he'd ever been. Remember, Harry said to his people. No one follows me in. Whatever happens inside, whatever sounds you hear, you stay out here. He looked at Neville. If anyone tries to be a hero, stop them. Neville nodded, jaw set. Harry looked at Hermione, who was visibly fighting back tears, not of sadness, but of fear for him. He crossed to her and put a hand on her shoulder. I'll be fine, he said quietly. I promise. This isn't going to be close. You'd better keep that promise, Harry Potter. Her voice was thick. Or I'll find a way to bring you back just to kill you myself. He laughed, short, real, warm, and stepped back. Then Harry turned toward Malfoy Manor and walked down the hill. The outer wards hit him like walking through a curtain of warm water. The detection grid recognized him instantly, Pendragon blood, Emperor's authority, and parted. The anti-apparition layer tried to resist and failed. Harry didn't need to apparate, but the ward's attempt to constrain him was almost insulting. He pushed through it like pushing through cobwebs. The third layer, physical repulsion, slammed into him with genuine force. A wall of compressed magic designed to physically throw intruders backward. Harry walked through it without slowing, the Aldrich constitution absorbing the impact as if it were a stiff breeze. Fourth layer. Fifth layer. The wards grew more sophisticated, more dangerous, curses woven into the very fabric of the protections. Killing curses, mind shredders, bone breakers, all triggered automatically by unauthorized entry. They hit Harry and dissolved. His magic was simply too vast, too dense, too fundamentally anchored. The curses couldn't find purchase on someone who was more magical infrastructure than mortal wizard. The sixth layer, the blood wards, recognized the black blood in his veins and folded open like a greeting. The seventh layer, the final offensive cascade, Harry ate it. There was no other way to describe what happened. The cascade erupted, a storm of dark magic so concentrated it should have leveled a building, and Harry's combined bloodline simply absorbed it. The Potter War magic fed on combat energy. The Black Shadowcraft consumed dark magic by nature. The Emery's amplification took the raw power and added it to his own reserves. He walked through 7 layers of the most sophisticated private wards in Britain in under 2 minutes. The front door of Malfoy Manor stood before him, heavy oak, reinforced with iron, carved with serpents. Harry raised a hand and it exploded inward. Not blasted, disintegrated. Reduced to its component atoms by a pulse of pure magical force that Harry barely noticed expending. The entrance hall of Malfoy Manor was grand, marble floors, soaring ceiling, dark portraits lining the walls. 3 Death Eaters stood in that hall, wands drawn, masks in place. They'd known he was coming. They'd had time to prepare. They lasted 4 seconds. Harry didn't use spells. Didn't use his wand. He raised his hand and the Gryffindor courage aura inverted, pushing outward not as inspiration but as pure psychic weight, the presence of something so fundamentally overwhelming that lesser minds simply stopped. 2 of the 3 Death Eaters crumpled, unconscious before they hit the marble. The third managed a single curse, a killing curse, green light streaking toward Harry's chest. Harry caught it. His hand closed around the bolt of green light and held it. Not deflected, not dodged, held. The Peveril Death Mastery recognized the killing curse as its domain, death magic, however crudely applied, and refused to let it function against the Master of Death. Harry opened his hand and the green light dissipated like smoke. The Death Eater who'd cast it stared for one frozen moment, then ran. Harry let him. The Aurors would catch him outside. He moved deeper into the manor. The hallways were darker here, literally darker, the shadows thicker, the air colder. Voldemort's presence was doing this. The Dark Lord's magic was bleeding into the house, corrupting it, turning it into a reflection of his own twisted soul. Harry burned it clean as he walked. Light followed him, not conjured, just the natural result of his magic displacing the darkness. The shadows retreated from his approach like living things flinching from flame. More Death Eaters. A group of 5, entrenched at the top of a staircase, laying down covering fire, curses raining downward in a constant barrage. Harry raised a shield that wasn't a shield, a standing wave of pure magical force, the Emery's amplification turning a basic protego into something that could have stopped an avalanche. Their curses splashed against it like water against a cliff face. Harry walked up the stairs through their barrage, reached the top, and dispersed them with a pulse of shadow magic, black bloodline craft that wrapped around each Death Eater like a fist and pinned them to the walls, wands clattering to the floor. Sleep, Harry said, and the Pendragon command magic made it true. 5 bodies went limp in their shadow bindings. He was close now. Voldemort was ahead, through double doors at the end of a long corridor. Harry could feel the Dark Lord's magic intensifying, concentrating, preparing. Tom Riddle knew what was coming and was gathering every ounce of power he had for the confrontation. Harry paused at the doors. He could sense others behind them, not just Voldemort. Bellatrix Lestrange, her signature mad and burning. 2 others he didn't recognize, newer recruits, probably. And Lucius Malfoy. Not Draco. Not Narcissa. Harry's letter had worked, or perhaps Draco had simply read the writing on the wall. Either way, the non-combatants were gone. Only the committed remained. Harry pushed the doors open. The ballroom of Malfoy Manor was vast, a space designed for grandeur now repurposed as a Dark Lord's court. Voldemort stood at the far end, pale as bone, red eyes blazing, his wand, the Elder Wand, Harry realized with a jolt, no. Not the Elder Wand. An ordinary wand. Harry still felt the Elder Wand's presence elsewhere, in Dumbledore's possession, outside. Interesting. Voldemort had never retrieved it. Voldemort stood in a pool of darkness that seemed to radiate from him like an anti-light. Nagini was nowhere to be seen, of course. Dead in some corner of the manor, an ordinary dead snake now. Bellatrix flanked her master, vibrating with manic energy, her wand already spitting sparks. Lucius stood to the other side, his face a mask of controlled terror. The 2 unknown Death Eaters were near the walls, clearly uncomfortable, clearly reconsidering their life choices. Tom, Harry said. Voldemort's red eyes fixed on him. The Dark Lord's expression was complex. Fury, yes. But also something Harry hadn't expected, curiosity. Voldemort was examining him with the same intensity Harry was examining Voldemort, trying to understand what he was seeing. Harry Potter, Voldemort said. His voice was high and cold, filling the ballroom without effort. You've changed. I have. You haven't. Harry stopped 20 feet from the Dark Lord. Your Horcruxes are gone. All of them. You feel it, I know you do. That emptiness where your anchors used to be. Voldemort's expression didn't change. But his magic fluctuated, a barely perceptible wavering that told Harry everything. He felt it. He knew. You think that makes you powerful? Voldemort said. You think destroying my safeguards while I slept makes you my equal? I was never your equal, Tom. That prophecy was made before I came into my heritage. Harry let a fraction of his power surface, visible now, a corona of white gold light that filled the ballroom and pushed back against Voldemort's darkness. I am so far beyond your equal that this isn't a battle. It's an execution. Bellatrix screamed and attacked, a killing curse hurled with all her considerable force. Harry didn't look at her. He raised his left hand and her curse stopped in midair, frozen, then reversed direction so fast she barely dodged her own spell. Sit down, Bellatrix, Harry said. Pendragon command magic poured through the words, not a suggestion but a reality imposed upon the world. Bellatrix's legs buckled. She collapsed into a sitting position on the marble floor, her eyes wide with shock and her body refusing to obey her screaming mind. Anyone else? Harry looked at Lucius, at the two unnamed Death Eaters. Leave or stay. Those are your options. Staying means you stand beside him when he falls. The two unnamed Death Eaters ran. They were past Harry and out the doors before he finished speaking. Lucius Malfoy stood frozen. His face was a battlefield, pride against survival, loyalty against pragmatism. Harry watched the calculation happen in real time. My family, Lucius said. His voice was barely a whisper. Narcissa. Draco. Safe. Out of the manor. I gave your son the choice you never did. Harry held Lucius's gaze. You can still choose, Malfoy. Even now. Drop your wand and walk out. Lucius looked at Voldemort. Looked at Harry. The moment stretched, he dropped his wand. The clatter of it hitting marble was the loudest sound in the room. Lucius walked past Harry toward the doors on legs that visibly trembled, and he didn't look back. That left Voldemort and Bellatrix, who was still pinned to the floor by command magic, struggling against it with growing desperation. Release her, Voldemort said. His voice was still controlled, still cold, but Harry could hear what was underneath now. The calculation. The assessment. Tom Riddle, who had always been a survivor above all else, was evaluating his chances and not liking what he found. Why? So she can throw more curses I'll catch like tennis balls? Harry shook his head. This is between us, Tom. It always has been. Then come. Voldemort raised his wand. His power surged, vast, dark, genuine. For all his fragmentation, for all his losses, Tom Riddle was still an extraordinarily powerful wizard. The air between them turned to ice. The marble floor cracked. The shadows deepened into something that clawed at the light. Come and face the greatest sorcerer the world has ever known. Second greatest, Harry said. If that. Voldemort's first curse was not the killing curse, it was something far worse. A wave of concentrated dark magic that unmade matter at the molecular level, a spell that shouldn't have existed, that Voldemort had probably invented during his years of exploring the darkest corners of magic. It turned the air itself into a weapon, a tsunami of disintegration roaring toward Harry at the speed of thought. Harry raised both hands. The Potter War magic rose to meet the attack, not blocking but countering, creating a sphere of compressed magical force that caught Voldemort's wave and held it. The two magics collided with a sound like the world splitting apart. Marble pillars shattered. Windows exploded outward. The ceiling cracked. Harry pushed. The Emery's amplification tripled his output, and Voldemort's dark wave broke against him like surf against a seawall. The backlash flung debris across the ballroom, Bellatrix screamed as rubble rained around her, and Voldemort staggered. Actually staggered. Harry saw it, a falter in the Dark Lord's stance, a widening of those red eyes. Voldemort had thrown his strongest opening move, and Harry hadn't moved his feet. My turn, Harry said. He attacked. Not with a single spell, with a combination so fast and complex that it would have taken a team of 10 wizards to replicate. Potter War magic for the offensive barrage, concentrated bolts of golden force that hit like physical blows. Black shadow magic for the flanking, tendrils of darkness that struck from angles Voldemort couldn't guard simultaneously. Peveril death magic for the finisher, a focused beam of white light that carried the absolute authority of death itself. Voldemort fought. Credit where it was due, the Dark Lord was brilliant, experienced, and desperate. He deflected the war magic bolts with shields that reformed faster than Harry could break them. He burned the shadow tendrils with fiend fire that he controlled with terrifying precision. He dodged the death beam by operating, short-range displacement within the room, blinking from position to position in a way that turned the ballroom into a kaleidoscope of combat. But he was losing. Every exchange cost him more than it cost Harry. Every defense was slightly slower, every counter slightly weaker. Harry could see it in the fate sight, Voldemort's thread fraying, the inevitable conclusion drawing closer with every heartbeat. The Dark Lord knew it too. Harry could see the moment realization fully crystallized behind those red eyes, the understanding that this was not a fight he could win. That the boy he'd marked as an equal 17 years ago had become something that no living wizard could challenge. "What are you?" Voldemort hissed. They'd settled into a pause, 5 feet apart, magic crackling between them, the ballroom destroyed around them. Rubble, dust, flames from uncontrolled fiendfire licking at the walls. "I'm the Convergence," Harry said. 9 bloodlines in one wizard. The thing Merlin said couldn't happen naturally. The Emperor that the compact was written for. He stepped forward. "And I'm the boy you tried to kill in a crib. I'm the orphan you created. I'm the consequences of your choices, Tom." "Don't call me that name, Tom Marvolo Riddle." Harry said it with Pendragon authority, every syllable carrying the weight of command magic that demanded truth. "That's who you are. Not a lord. Not a dark god. A scared half-blood orphan who was so afraid of death that he shredded his own soul to avoid it." Another step forward. "And now your soul is whole again. One piece. Complete and vulnerable. Can you feel it? The mortality you've been running from since you were 16 years old." Voldemort's composure cracked. For the first time in decades, perhaps for the first time ever, genuine fear showed on that snake-like face. Not the calculated fear of a setback. Real, bone-deep terror of the thing he'd built his entire existence around avoiding. "You cannot kill me," Voldemort said, but his voice shook. "The prophecy, neither can live while the other survives, the prophecy says one of us has to kill the other. It doesn't say which one survives." Harry raised his right hand, the ring blazing with 9 colors, his magic building to a crescendo that made the air taste of lightning. "I've destroyed your immortality. I've broken your army. I've dismantled your political protection. There is nowhere to run, no one left to save you, and no piece of soul hidden away to drag you back." He let the moment breathe. "This is where it ends." Voldemort attacked. Everything he had, every dark spell, every forbidden curse, every ounce of power his fractured soul could generate. A maelstrom of destruction that would have killed anything less than what Harry was. Killing curses by the dozen, cruciatus curses woven into cutting hexes woven into fiendfire woven into reality-warping magic that bent space itself. Harry walked through it. Not dodging. Not shielding. Walking. The curses hit him and broke. The fiendfire touched him and died. The reality warps bounced off the Aldrich Constitution like light off a mirror. He walked forward through a storm that could have leveled a city and he did not slow down. 1 step. 2 steps. 3. Voldemort's attacks grew more desperate, wilder, less controlled. His face twisted into something barely human as he poured his very life force into the assault, burning through his magical reserves at a rate that was visibly diminishing him. 4 steps. 5. Harry stood before Lord Voldemort. Close enough to touch. The Dark Lord's final curse, a wordless killing curse thrown point-blank, hit Harry in the chest and vanished like a raindrop hitting an ocean. "Goodbye, Tom," Harry said. He reached out with the Peveril death magic, not a beam, not a spell, not a showy display. Just a hand, laid flat against Voldemort's chest. And through that touch, the Master of Death spoke to the soul within. "Your time is done. Pass beyond the veil." Voldemort's mouth opened. His red eyes went wide, wider than they'd ever been, and for one heartbeat, Harry saw something in them that might have been relief. The burden of 70 years of running from death, lifted in an instant. Then the light left those red eyes. The body crumpled, not dramatically, not with an explosion of dark magic or a theatrical scream. It simply fell, the way all bodies fall when the soul departs. Tom Marvolo Riddle hit the ruined marble floor of the Malfoy ballroom and was dead. Truly dead. Finally dead. Completely, irrevocably, permanently dead. The silence was absolute. Harry stood over the body and felt, not triumph. Not satisfaction. Something quieter. Resolution. The war that had defined his life since birth was over. The monster was gone. The nightmare had ended. He turned to Bellatrix. She was staring at her master's body with an expression of pure incomprehension, a fanatic whose god had just been proven mortal. The command magic still held her seated, and her wand was on the floor beside her. "It's over, Bellatrix," Harry said. "He's dead. Whatever he promised you, power, glory, a world shaped in his image, it died with him." She screamed. A raw, animal sound of grief and rage and shattered faith. She lunged for her wand, the command magic had weakened with the distraction of combat, and her fingers closed around it. "Stupefy," Harry said. Not a shout. Not a dramatic gesture. Just a word, and the Emery's amplified stunning spell hit her like a freight train. She was unconscious before her fingers fully gripped the wand. Harry looked at the body of Tom Riddle one more time. It was already changing, aging, decaying, the years that dark magic had held at bay catching up in an accelerating cascade. In minutes, there would be nothing left but dust and robes. He turned and walked out of the ballroom. Through the ruined corridors. Past the unconscious Death Eaters still pinned to walls or slumped on floors. Through the entrance hall where the first three had fallen. Out the front door, or where the front door had been, and into the sunlight of a June afternoon. His people were there. They'd come closer during the fight, close enough to see the manor shaking, to hear the destruction, to feel the magical shockwaves. They stood in a line at the edge of the property's ruined wards, and as Harry emerged, whole and unharmed and calm, the tension broke. Hermione ran to him first. Slammed into him with a hug that nearly knocked him off his feet despite everything he was. She was crying, openly, messily, and Harry held her and let her. "He's dead," Harry said. "It's done." Neville was next, not a hug but a clasped forearm, warrior to warrior, his face split by a grin so wide it changed his whole appearance. "You brilliant, terrifying bastard." "Language, Neville," Augusta called from behind, but she was grinning too. "Remus." "Tonks." "Augusta." One by one, they reached him, touches, words, the physical confirmation that it was real, it was over, they'd won. Daphne was last. She stood slightly apart, watching with those sharp blue eyes, and when Harry met her gaze over Hermione's shoulder, she simply nodded. A small, precise movement that said everything, "Well done." "What's next?" Harry gently disengaged from Hermione and turned to face the assembled Order members, and, further out, the press. Reporters with cameras. Photographers capturing the moment. The WWN broadcaster with his enchanted microphone, narrating to a listening nation. Harry raised his voice. Not with amplification, just clearly, carrying across the afternoon air. Lord Voldemort is dead. His Horcruxes are destroyed. His soul has passed beyond the veil. There is no return this time. He paused. Let it sink in. The war is over. The cheer that went up from the Auror lines was deafening. It spread, from the Aurors to the Order members to the press to, somehow, the magical wireless itself, carrying across Britain to every ear tuned in. Harry could feel it, a wave of joy and relief crashing across the magical world like a dam breaking. In Diagon Alley, people poured into the streets. In Hogsmeade, the pubs opened their doors and the celebrations began. In the Ministry, Amelia Bones closed her eyes and allowed herself one moment of pure, uncomplicated relief before returning to the mountain of work ahead. And at Malfoy Manor, surrounded by the ruins of Voldemort's last stronghold, Harry Potter stood in the sunlight and let the moment breathe. It was done. The Dark Lord was dead. The war was over. Now came the harder part, building what came after. 3 hours later, Harry stood in the throne room of Heir and addressed his inner circle. The castle had been opened to them fully now, quarters assigned, access granted, the ancient magic of the place settling around its new inhabitants like a contented cat. Hermione had nearly passed out upon seeing the library, 7 floors of books spanning 15 centuries of magical knowledge. Neville had found the castle's gardens, overgrown but awakening, responding to magic with eager vitality. Augusta had claimed a suite in the East Wing and was already directing Creature in its furnishing with military precision. Daphne stood beside Harry's throne, not sitting, not kneeling, but present. A position that said advisor rather than subject. Harry appreciated the distinction. "The war is over," Harry said. "But the work is beginning. We have a world to rebuild, and I don't intend to do it slowly." He looked at each of them in turn. "Hermione, I'm naming you Imperial Archon of Law. The legal framework you've built becomes the foundation of the new governance. Your job is to take the principles we've agreed on and turn them into enforceable, just law." Hermione straightened. Her eyes were bright, not with tears this time, but with fierce purpose. "Accepted. Neville, Imperial Marshal. You command the military arm of the court. Not an army of conquest, a force of protection. Your job is to ensure that the next time a Dark Lord rises, we're ready." Neville nodded sharply. "Accepted. Daphne, Imperial Chancellor. Politics, diplomacy, external relations. You speak for the court in every negotiation, manage the Wisengamot relationship, and keep me honest about public perception." Daphne's eyebrow rose. "Chancellor. Not consort. Unless you prefer consort. Chancellor is fine." But she smiled, quick and real. "Augusta, Grand Advisor. You know the old world better than anyone here. I need that knowledge, the history, the precedents, the people. You're my institutional memory." Augusta inclined her head. "Honored, Your Majesty. Remus, Imperial Envoy to the non-human peoples. Werewolves, goblins, centaurs, mere-people, house elves, everyone the old ministry treated as less than. Your job is to build real relationships. Equal treaties. Mutual respect." Remus's scarred face held an expression of profound purpose. "I'll do it justice. Tonks, Director of Imperial Intelligence. The Auror Corps is compromised by decades of political interference. I need someone who can build a clean intelligence service from scratch. You report directly to me." Tonks saluted, casual, irreverent, perfectly her. "Yes, boss." Harry looked at them. 6 people who'd stood with him when the world was uncertain. 6 people who'd believed before believing was safe. "We start tomorrow," he said. Tonight we celebrate. Because we won. We actually won." And for the first time in a long time, perhaps for the first time ever, Harry Potter allowed himself to simply be happy. The fire whiskey appeared as if by magic. It was by magic. Creature was getting very good at anticipating needs. The throne room transformed from a place of authority to a place of warmth as conjured cushions appeared, food materialized on surfaces, and the impossible tension of the past 3 days finally broke. Neville told a joke that made Augusta snort tea through her nose. Hermione began a sentence about reform legislation and was physically dragged away from a parchment by Tonks. Remus sat in a corner with a drink and a smile that looked decades younger than the one he'd worn 3 days ago, a cured man in a new world, trying to believe both were real. And Daphne found Harry on the balcony again, standing in the cool Welsh night, looking out over the hidden valley where Heir sat like a jewel in the darkness. "You did it," she said. "No ceremony. No title. Just fact. We did it." Harry leaned on the stone railing. "I had a vision and power. But you gave me strategy. Hermione gave me legitimacy. Neville gave me strength. Everyone played their part. Don't be modest. It doesn't suit emperors. Harry laughed. Noted. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, two people at the beginning of something enormous, allowing themselves a moment of quiet before the enormity resumed. What happens now? Daphne asked eventually. The war's over. The enemy's dead. The Wizengamot has capitulated. What does an emperor do when the conquering's done? He builds, Harry said. Schools. Hospitals. Treaties. A magical world where no child grows up in a cupboard. Where no one is persecuted for what they are. Where power serves people instead of ruling them. That's going to make enemies. Different enemies than Voldemort, subtler ones. People who profit from the current system. People who see reform as a threat. I know. Harry looked at her. That's what you're for. Chancellor. She met his gaze. The moonlight caught her hair, turned it silver white. Her eyes were very blue, clear and sharp, and looking at him as if she was seeing something she wanted. You're going to be extraordinary, she said. You already are, but what you'll become. What you'll build. It's going to be extraordinary. Stay with me and help me do it. It wasn't a request. Not quite a command. Somewhere in between, an offer and a statement and a promise wrapped in 6 words. Daphne smiled. The real one. The one that transformed her from Ice Queen to fire. Try and stop me, she said. Chapter 4, The Serpent's Gambit. The first week of the new era passed like a whirlwind made of parchment, politics, and ambition. Harry woke each morning in Caer Emrys to a sunrise that painted the hidden valley in impossible colors, golds and purples that no natural sky could produce, filtered through the ancient ward space that folded this place away from the world. He'd take his tea on the balcony, review the overnight intelligence reports Tonks had begun compiling, and then descend to the council chamber where his people were already working. Hermione had become a force of nature. The legal framework she'd sketched in Grimmauld Place's kitchen was now a fully articulated imperial charter, 37 pages of governance principles, rights protections, institutional boundaries, and transitional procedures. She'd worked with Amelia Bones via Fleur to ensure the charter integrated smoothly with existing ministry function where possible and overrode it cleanly where necessary. The Wizengamot retains legislative authority over domestic policy, Hermione explained during the third morning briefing, spreading the relevant section across the council table. They can propose and pass laws, manage budgets, oversee departments. What changes is oversight. The Emperor, holds veto authority over any law that violates the Charter's core principles. Equal rights, creature protections, anti-corruption measures. They can't legislate those away. And if they try? Harry asked. The compact's self-enforcing nature kicks in. A law that violates the Charter's core principles literally cannot be enacted, the Ministry's ward structure will reject it. Hermione allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. I built the Charter's protections into the ward architecture itself. With Ragnar's help. It's quite elegant, if I do say so. You rebuilt the Ministry's wards? Neville asked from across the table, eyebrows rising. Not rebuilt. Amended. The compact was already woven into the foundation, I just added specificity. Think of it as updating the terms of service. She paused. Though I did also add protections against anyone using the Imperious Curse within ministry walls. That seemed prudent. Harry nodded. Good. What about the creature legislation? Repealed as of yesterday. Amelia signed the emergency order, the Werewolf Registration Act, the Being/Beast classification system, the House Elf binding statutes, the Centaur territorial restrictions. All gone. Hermione's voice carried the fierce satisfaction of someone who'd waited years for this moment. New framework goes to the Wizengamot next week. Remus has already opened preliminary discussions with the werewolf communities. Ragnarok is coordinating a formal treaty proposal from the Goblin Nation. And the Centaurs? That's more complex. Hermione glanced at Remus, who was nursing a cup of tea and looking healthier than Harry had ever seen him, filled out, color in his cheeks, the permanent exhaustion of lycanthropy finally absent. They're not hostile, but they're wary. They have long memories. I'll go to them myself, Harry said. The Gryffindor bloodline gives me beast speech, it should work with centaurs, given their classification history. He caught Hermione's expression. I know. They're not beasts. But the magical gift doesn't know that. It bridges communication with non-human intelligences regardless of the political taxonomy. Just, be respectful, Hermione said. They're proud. And they've been burned before by wizards making promises. I'll be more than respectful. I'll be honest. Harry turned to Daphne. Political situation. Daphne had taken to the Chancellor role like a bird to sky. She'd spent the week in constant communication with Wisengamot members, pure-blood families, and international contacts, mapping the political landscape with the precision of a military cartographer. 3 factions have crystallized, she said, standing to point at a chart she'd pinned to the wall. The Loyalists, Augusta's faction, plus the families who declared support at the first session. 22 votes. Firmly behind you. The Progressives, a newer bloc, mostly younger members and the more liberal old guard. 12 votes. Supportive of your reform specifically, less committed to the imperial structure broadly. They'll back you as long as you're doing what they like. And the opposition? The Traditionalists. 16 votes. Led, ostensibly, by Cyrus Greengrass, she paused at Harry's look. My father is playing a double game with my full knowledge and approval. He presents as the reasonable face of conservative opposition, someone who questions and slows, but doesn't obstruct. It keeps the actual hardliners from coalescing around someone more dangerous. Like who? Like whoever fills Lucius Malfoy's vacuum. Daphne's expression tightened. Lucius is in custody awaiting trial. His assets are frozen pending investigation. But the network he built, the web of favors, debts, and mutual blackmail that kept pure-blood families in line, that network still exists. Someone will pick it up. Who's the most likely candidate? Augustus Rookwood. Former Unspeakable. Escaped Azkaban during the mass breakout. He wasn't at the manor during your assault, he's been operating independently for months, building something separate from Voldemort's inner circle. Daphne crossed her arms. He's smarter than Lucius. More patient. And he doesn't have the liability of a dark mark. Harry filed the name. Tonks, anything on Rookwood? Tonks looked up from her own stack of reports. She'd established her intelligence operation with startling speed, recruiting from the Auror Corps' disaffected, from Mundungus Fletcher's network of informants, and from sources Harry preferred not to know about in detail. Gone to ground, Tonks said. Completely. No magical signature detected anywhere in Britain for 3 days. Either he's fled the country, or he's behind wards good enough to block my detection grid. Or both, Daphne murmured. Keep looking, Harry said. He's a problem that grows if ignored. The briefing continued, Neville reporting on the reorganization of magical defense forces, Augusta providing updates on old family sentiments, Remus detailing his upcoming meetings with werewolf pack leaders. The machinery of governance churning, building momentum. This was what Harry's days had become, the brass tacks of rebuilding a world. Less dramatic than fighting Voldemort, but in many ways harder. Dark Lords could be destroyed with sufficient power. Institutions had to be carefully dismantled and rebuilt without collapsing the people who depended on them. After the briefing, Harry caught Daphne's arm as the others filed out. Your father. The double game. How long can he sustain it? Daphne turned back, her expression assessing. Indefinitely, as long as no one looks too closely at his actual voting record versus his public rhetoric. But that's not what you're really asking. I'm asking if he's in danger. Playing both sides is fine until someone figures it out. Something softened in her eyes, just slightly, just for a moment. He's careful. He's been doing this for 20 years. But, yes. If Rookwood or whoever emerges as opposition leader realizes my father is feeding me information. She didn't finish the thought. Then we need to accelerate. Give the opposition less time to organize. Harry leaned against the council table. What if I offered the traditionalist bloc something they actually want? Something real, that costs me nothing but gives them a win to show their constituents? Daphne tilted her head. Such as? Preservation of pure-blood cultural traditions. Not political power, cultural heritage. Funded programs to maintain old magical practices, traditional ceremonies, family magic archives. Things that matter to them emotionally and cost them nothing politically. She stared at him for a beat. Then, that's brilliant. It's genuinely brilliant. Half of what the old families fear isn't loss of power, it's loss of identity. Their traditions being swallowed by modernization. If you position yourself as the protector of magical heritage while simultaneously pushing equality reforms, then opposing me means opposing the very thing they claim to care about. You're splitting their coalition down the middle. Daphne's smile was razor-sharp and deeply approving. The cultural conservatives will side with you because you're preserving their traditions. The political hardliners, the ones who actually just want to maintain hierarchy, will be isolated. Exposed. Draft the proposal. Cultural Heritage Preservation Act. Full funding from the Imperial Treasury. Present it at next week's Gringotts session as a gesture of unity. Consider it done. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Harry. You're getting dangerously good at this. I have a good teacher. Flatterer. But she was smiling as she left. That afternoon, Harry went to the Forbidden Forest. He apparat to the edge of Hogwarts grounds, the castle's wards welcomed him like an old friend, and walked into the tree line without hesitation. The forest had always felt ominous during his school years, dark, foreboding, full of things that wanted to eat students. Now, with his full magical senses active, it felt different. Still wild. Still dangerous. But not hostile. The forest was a living ecosystem of magical creatures going about their lives, perfectly content to leave humans alone if humans left them alone. The centaurs found him before he found them. He'd been walking for 10 minutes when an arrow thumped into a tree 3 feet to his left, not aimed at him. A warning. An announcement of presence. Harry stopped. Waited. They emerged from the shadows between the trees, 4 centaurs, fully armed with bows drawn. Harry recognized Megorian in the lead, the herd's leader, broad-chested and grim-faced, with a bow that could have put an arrow through plate armor. Human, Megorian said. You trespass. Harry reached for the Gryffindor gift, beast speech, the ability to communicate with non-human magical intelligences. He felt it activate, felt his perception shift to accommodate a different mode of communication. Not Parseltongue, something broader. An understanding. I come seeking dialogue, Harry said. Not in English, in something older, something that resonated in the magical frequencies that centaurs perceived. Their ears pricked. Bows lowered fractionally. You speak the old tongue, Megorian said, and now Harry heard layers in the centaur's voice he wouldn't have caught before, respect, surprise, wariness. No wizard has spoken it in our memory. I am the Gryffindor heir. The old tongue is my birthright. Harry kept his hands visible, his posture open. And I am the Emperor of all magic, the throne of Heir Emrys has been reclaimed. Megorian's expression shifted. The other centaurs stirred, hooves stamping, tails flicking. A younger one whispered something urgent to his neighbor. We have read this in the stars, Megorian said slowly. The planet spoke of change. Mars burns bright, but differently than in war. More like. He searched for words. Like the forge. Like reshaping. That's exactly what I'm doing. Reshaping. Harry took a step forward, not aggressive, just closing distance to conversational range. The old laws that confined your people to this forest are repealed. As of 3 days ago, centaur territorial restrictions no longer exist in wizarding law. Megorian's eyes narrowed. Words. Wizards have given words before. I know. And I know those words meant nothing because the wizards who spoke them had no power to enforce them, or no intention to. Harry met the herd leader's gaze. I have both. The compact gives me authority over every magical institution. And I am here, personally, in your territory, speaking your language, to tell you that the days of confinement are over. What do you want in return? Megorian asked. Blunt. Direct. Harry appreciated it. Alliance. Not servitude, alliance. Your people have knowledge of the stars, of the forest, of magical ecology that wizards have ignored for centuries. I want that knowledge shared freely, to mutual benefit. In exchange, the Centaur nation gets full sovereignty over your territories, not as a reservation, but as a recognized independent nation within magical Britain. Self-governing. Self-determining. The centaurs conferred, rapid exchanges in their own language that Harry's gift let him follow, debate about trust, about history, about the stars' alignment. Megorian listened to his people, then turned back. We will consider. The stars must be consulted. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Harry inclined his head, a gesture of respect between equals. When you've reached a decision, send word to Heir Emrys. You'll be received with honor. He turned and walked away. No one put an arrow in his back. Behind him, he heard Megorian say something to the others, quietly, but his enhanced hearing caught it. He is not like the others. The stars were right. Harry smiled as he left the tree line. Small victories. Building blocks. He returned to Heir Emrys to find chaos. Not the destructive kind, the productive kind. Somehow, in the hours he'd been gone, his castle had acquired approximately 30 additional people. Ministry workers, researchers, a team of goblin ward specialists Ragnarok had sent, and what appeared to be a delegation from Bosbaton's academy led by a tall, silver-haired woman Harry recognized with a jolt. Ari. Fleur Delacour swept across the entrance hall like a force of nature, part Vila grace making the air shimmer around her. She grasped his hands and kissed both cheeks in the French fashion. When I heard what happened, I came immediately. Madame Maxime sends her regards, and her recognition of ZE Compact. Fleur. Harry blinked. You're here as a diplomat. I am here as a friend. But also, she gestured behind her, where 3 robed figures waited. ZE French Ministry wishes to establish formal relations with ZE Imperial Court. ZE Ave sent Zir Senior Ambassador. Harry looked past her at the delegation, 2 men and a woman in elegant French robes, all wearing carefully composed diplomatic expressions. The international dimension he'd been expecting but hadn't yet addressed was apparently addressing itself. Welcome to Heir Emrys, Harry said, activating his political brain. I'll have quarters prepared and we can begin discussions this evening. Daphne, already on it. His chancellor materialized from somewhere, impeccably dressed and projecting the kind of composed authority that made the French diplomats visibly recalculate their approach. Ambassador Delacroix, if you'll follow me. The Imperial Chancellor's office is this way. The French delegation followed Daphne like iron filings following a magnet. Fleur remained, watching them go with amusement. Your Chancellor is formidable, Fleur observed. She terrifies professional politicians twice her age. Harry steered Fleur toward the less formal sitting room. Tell me what's happening internationally. I've been focused on domestic issues. Fleur's amusement faded into something more serious. ZE Compact's activation was felt everywhere, Ari. Not just Britain. Every magical institution in ZE world felt Zir wards acknowledge you. ZE ICW is, she searched for the English word. Panicking? No. More like, scrambling. ZE do not know what to do with an emperor ZE have never planned for. Are they hostile? Not yet. Confused. ZE Asian ministries are waiting, ZE have their own old magic, their own interpretations of how ZE Compact applies to them. ZE Americans are. Fleur's expression twisted with something like diplomatic distaste. ZE Americans are being Americans. Makusa has issued a statement saying ZE do not recognize monarchical authority over Zir sovereignty. I haven't claimed authority over their sovereignty. I know. But ZE are, how you say, getting Zir response in early. Before you can make demands you have not made. Harry nodded. Classic defensive posture, reject authority before it's asserted to establish precedent. I need to address the ICW directly. Soon. Before fear hardens into policy. That is why France moved first, Fleur said. Madame Maxime convinced ZE French ministers that early alliance with you is better than late opposition. She remembers ZE tournament, she knows what you are. What am I, to Madame Maxime? Honorable. Fleur said it simply. Honorable and powerful. A combination most politicians find impossible to believe exists. Harry filed this for the evening's diplomatic session. International relations were going to require careful handling. The compact technically gave him authority over all magical institutions worldwide, but exercising that authority over unwilling foreign governments was a fast track to war. He needed to position himself as an ally, not an overlord. A resource, not a threat. Stay, Harry said to Fleur. As long as you like. I could use someone who understands the international landscape from the inside. Fleur smiled, warm, genuine, the Vila allure deliberately muted in favor of real human connection. I was hoping you would say that. Bill and I have already discussed it. He would like to work with ZE goblins on ZE new treaty. He says Ragnarok likes him. Ragnarok likes Bill's work ethic. That's basically the same thing for a goblin. Harry grinned. Have him contact Ragnarok directly. We can use every bridge builder we have. The French diplomatic session went well, better than Harry had expected. Ambassador Delacroix was a pragmatist who recognized the compact's legitimacy and wanted to secure France's position as primary ally before anyone else could. The preliminary agreement was straightforward. France formally recognized the Imperial Court recognized French domestic sovereignty, and both parties agreed to a mutual defense treaty and free magical travel accord. It was midnight by the time the documents were signed, provisional, pending ratification by the French Wiesengemot equivalent, and Harry found himself alone in his study, reviewing the day's accumulation of reports and correspondence. A knock at the door. Tonks, without her usual irreverence, her hair was a muted brown, which Harry had learned meant she was serious. We have a problem, she said, closing the door behind her. Rookwood. Rookwood. She dropped a file on his desk. My people finally got a trace. He's not hiding in Britain, he's been meeting with representatives from 4 different magical governments. Quietly. Under assumed identity. Harry opened the file. Surveillance reports, intercepted communications, movement patterns. Which governments? Russia. Egypt. Japan. And, Tonks's expression was grim. The American Makusa. Their hardline faction, the isolationists who've been pushing anti-compact rhetoric. Harry leaned back in his chair. The picture assembled itself in his mind with disturbing clarity. He's building an international coalition against me. Using the foreign government's fear of the compact as leverage. It gets worse. Tonks pulled a second document from the file. This was intercepted yesterday, a communication from Rookwood to an unknown recipient. We haven't cracked the cipher completely, but the fragments we have reference the Malfoy contingency and traditional authority restoration. He's picking up Lucius's network and expanding it internationally. Harry, this isn't just a political opposition play. The Russian magical government has a military wing. So does Japan's. If Rookwood convinces them that the compact is a threat to their sovereignty and they should resist with force, then we have a potential international magical war. Harry stared at the documents. Not with fear, with calculation. Timeline. Based on the communication patterns, weeks, not months. Rookwood is moving fast. He knows that the longer you have to consolidate, the harder it becomes to challenge you. Harry stood. Paced to the window. The valley below was dark and peaceful, a lie of tranquility while threats gathered beyond the mountains. "Wake Daphne," he said. "And get me a secure Fluk connection to Ragnarok. We need to get ahead of this." By 3 a.m, Harry's council was assembled in the war room. The living map of magical Britain glowed on its platform, but tonight Harry had expanded its range, pushing through the ley line network, the castle's connection to the global magical infrastructure feeding him data from further afield. "Rookwood's strategy is elegant," Daphne said, studying the intelligence reports with sharp focus despite the hour. "He's not positioning himself as a Dark Lord, that brand is toxic after Voldemort. He's positioning himself as a liberator. A defender of national sovereignty against imperial overreach. And the international governments are buying it? Some of them. The ones who were already nervous about the compact." Daphne tapped the map where Russia's magical territory glowed faintly. The Russian Ministry of Sorcery has never fully accepted Western magical governance structures. They have their own ancient traditions, their own version of magical authority. The compact technically applies to them, but they've never acknowledged it. And Japan? Similar situation. The Japanese magical world operates under the Celestial Compact, their own founding document, which they argue supersedes Merlin's work because it predates it. She looked up. They might actually have a point. The Asian magical traditions are genuinely older than European ones. Harry absorbed this. So Rookwood is telling them, this European emperor is going to override your own traditions. Your own authority. Resist now or lose everything. Exactly. And the Americans are particularly susceptible because Makusa was founded explicitly as a rejection of Old World magical authority. Daphne crossed her arms. If you march in and assert compact authority over them, even if you have the legal right, you prove Rookwood's narrative. Then I don't assert authority. I assert partnership. Harry turned from the map to face his council. I need to go before the ICW. Not to demand recognition, to clarify my intentions. Make it clear that the compact's authority is about coordination and minimum standards, not micromanagement of domestic policy. Will that be enough? Depends on how much damage Rookwood's done already. Harry looked at Tonks. Can you get me a meeting with the Japanese representative? Unofficial. Off the record. I can try. The Japanese tend to be formal, going around their official channels might offend them. Then go through official channels. Fast. Harry turned to Hermione, who'd been reading the intelligence file with growing alarm. The charter, does it address international relations? In broad strokes. The compact establishes the Emperor as supreme magical authority worldwide, but, she held up a hand at the room's collective intake of breath. But. There's a distinction in the original text between authority and governance. The Emperor has authority in the sense of final arbiter, if all other systems fail, the Emperor can intervene. But the assumption is that other systems handle their own affairs. Like a Supreme Court versus a legislature. Exactly. You don't make laws for Japan. You don't run Russia's government. But if there's a dispute between magical nations, or a threat that transcends borders, or a government committing atrocities against its own magical population, that's when the compact activates. Then that's our message. Harry slammed his palm on the table, not in anger, in decision. I'm not claiming the right to rule the world. I'm claiming the right to intervene when the world is failing. That's a message even the Americans can stomach. Maybe, Daphne said. If we deliver it right. And if Rookwood hasn't already poisoned the well beyond recovery. Then we move faster than him. Harry straightened. I'm calling an emergency session of the ICW. Tomorrow. As Emperor, I have the right to convene it, the compact is clear on that point. Every magical government, represented, in one room. I'll make my case directly. You'll need more than words, Neville said quietly. He'd been listening throughout, absorbing, processing, thinking in the strategic terms Harry had asked him to develop. The governments Rookwood is courting are scared. Scared people need reassurance, not just rhetoric. You need to offer them something concrete. Such as a limit. A public, binding limit on your own authority. Neville met Harry's eyes steadily. I know you don't intend to be a tyrant. I know it. But they don't know you. They see a 16-year-old wizard with power beyond comprehension who just killed the most feared Dark Lord in history. They need to know you can be checked. The room was quiet. Harry turned the idea over. His instinct resisted, he was the Emperor, the compact was clear, limits on his authority were limits on his ability to do good. But his strategic mind recognized the truth in what Neville was saying. You're right, Harry said. If I want willing allies instead of resentful subjects, I need to show I can be constrained. He looked at Hermione. Draft an amendment to the Charter. A set of limitations on imperial authority, things I explicitly cannot do unilaterally. Declare war. Overthrow a sitting government. Interfere in domestic legislation. Make it clear and public. Hermione nodded slowly. A bill of limits. Like a constitution constraining a monarch. Exactly like that. I keep the big things, final arbiter in disputes, intervention authority in cases of atrocity, coordination of threats that cross borders. But I give up the small things. The things I never intended to use anyway. And if Rookwood's coalition looks at those limits and sees weakness, then they'll learn the difference between voluntary restraint and actual weakness. Harry's expression was calm, but the air around him thickened subtly, a reminder that the power he was choosing to limit was still very much present. I'm giving up nothing I actually need. I'm just being explicit about boundaries I'd have maintained anyway. Smart, Daphne murmured. Very smart. You take Rookwood's best argument away, the unchecked tyrant narrative, while maintaining everything that actually matters. When this is done, when the ICW session is over and the Bill of Limits is public, then we go after Rookwood himself. Harry's voice went hard. Not his ideas. Those can be debated in the open. But his methods, using a fugitive Death Eater as their intermediary, meeting in secret, potentially coordinating military action against a legitimate authority, those are actionable. You want to expose him? I want to present the evidence to the ICW itself. Let the international community see that the man whispering in their ears is a convicted Death Eater who escaped prison. Let them decide for themselves whether his concern for sovereignty is genuine or just Voldemort's movement wearing a new mask. Morning came with no sleep for any of them. By 7, Hermione had drafted the Bill of Limits. By 8, Harry had reviewed it, modified 2 clauses, and approved it. By 9, formal invitations to an emergency ICW session had been dispatched via magical courier to every recognized magical government on Earth. The session was set for the following day, diplomatic courtesy demanded at least 24 hours notice, and Harry wasn't interested in starting his international debut by being rude. But the speed of it sent its own message: this Emperor moves fast. Keep up or get left behind. In the intervening hours, Harry handled a dozen other matters. A meeting with Cassandra Vance about profit coverage of the international situation, calibrated carefully to inform without alarming. A fluke call with Amelia Bones about the Malfoy trial proceedings. Lucius was cooperating, providing information on Death Eater networks in exchange for reduced sentencing. Testimony that was helping Tonks's intelligence operation identify remaining threats. And a conversation Harry had been both anticipating and dreading, Draco Malfoy. The younger Malfoy appeared at Cair Emery's at noon, brought by Flo, escorted by Tonks, looking like a man who expected to be executed and was trying to maintain his dignity on the walk to the scaffold. He'd lost weight. His face was sharper, paler, the aristocratic features of his father made gaunt by stress and sleeplessness. His robes were expensive but rumpled, the unconscious dishevelment of someone whose world had collapsed. He stood in the castle's entrance hall and stared at the white stone walls and magical architecture with an expression that mixed awe with acute misery. Malfoy. Harry came down the main staircase alone, a deliberate choice. No guards, no advisors. Just two teenagers who'd been enemies since they were 11, meeting in the transformed landscape of a world neither of them fully recognized. Potter. Draco's voice was hoarse. He straightened, mustering the Malfoy composure through obvious effort. Your letter said, he stopped. Started again. You said there would be a place. For people who chose differently. I did. Harry reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. You got your mother out. And 3 prisoners from the dungeons. 2 prisoners. The third, Draco's jaw worked. The third was already dead when I got there. I tried, you saved 2 people. And your mother. That matters. Harry studied Draco, not with his enhanced senses, not with political calculation. Just looking at a young man who was drowning and had grabbed the only rope in reach. What do you want, Draco? Not what your father wants. Not what the Malfoy name demands. What do you want? Draco stared at him. The question seemed to hit him physically, a concept so foreign to his experience that processing it took visible effort. I want, his voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I want to not be my father. I want to not have a dead thing's brand on my arm. I want my mother to be safe and he stopped. Something raw and young showed through the cracks in his composure. I want a second chance. I know I don't deserve one. I know I was awful. To you, to Granger, to everyone. I know. Do you know why you were awful? Draco flinched. Because I was raised to believe, no. Because you were scared. Harry said it without cruelty. You were scared of your father's expectations, scared of not being enough, scared of a world that was changing in ways your family hadn't prepared you for. Fear makes people cruel. I know, I've been afraid, and I've been cruel. Draco stared. Whatever he'd expected from this meeting, this level of understanding clearly wasn't it. Here's what I'm offering, Harry said. Not a pardon, you haven't been charged with anything, and I won't let anyone charge you for crimes committed under duress as a minor. Not a position, you haven't earned one yet. What I'm offering is time. Space. A chance to figure out who Draco Malfoy is when he's not performing for his father or groveling for a dead lunatic. He paused. Your mother is welcome at Cair Emery's. You both are. Consider it sanctuary while you figure things out. Why? The word burst from Draco with desperate confusion. Why would you? I've been your enemy for 5 years. I tried to, you tried to be what you were told to be. And you failed at it, badly, because it was never really you. Harry shrugged. Besides, if I only surround myself with people who've always liked me, I'll never hear the truth. I need people willing to disagree with me. You've always been willing to disagree with me. Something that might have been a laugh escaped Draco, wet, broken, surprised. That's an insane reason to. I'm the Emperor of all magic who killed Voldemort at 16. Insane is relative. Harry extended his hand. Not asking you to kneel. Not asking you to pledge loyalty. Just asking if you want to stay and figure things out. Draco looked at the offered hand. His own was trembling, fine tremors that spoke of exhaustion and emotional overload. But he reached out. Clasped Harry's hand. Gripped hard, like a man gripping a ledge over a drop. "Okay," Draco whispered. "Okay." Harry nodded. Released the handshake. "Tonks will show you to quarters. Rest. Eat. We'll talk more when you're ready." Draco followed Tonks up the staircase, his steps unsteady, his posture that of someone who'd been carrying a weight and had just been told he could put it down. At the top of the stairs, he paused. Looked back. Potter, Harry. The name was strange in his mouth. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Hermione's here. She's going to make you apologize to her eventually." Draco's laugh this time was almost real. "I probably deserve that." "You definitely deserve that. But you'll survive." Harry waved him off. "Go. Rest." The ICW convened in a chamber beneath the Swiss Alps, a neutral space built specifically for international magical gatherings, hidden in a fold of space not unlike Heir Emery's. Harry operated there with Daphne, Hermione, and a security detail of 6 battle-trained goblins Ragnarok had insisted on providing. "Goblins for security?" Hermione had asked when the armored figures materialized in Heir Emery's entrance hall. "Statement of Alliance," Harry had replied. "Every government Claude Opus 4.